Forced to divorce, I turned into a boss. Long Xiao was used and abandoned by his wife, and was forced to sign a divorce agreement and leave the house with nothing. He vowed to take revenge and awakened his spirit pearl, transforming himself into a domineering CEO. Faced with his ex-wife kneeling and begging for forgiveness, Long Xiao chose to trample her hard under his feet. Chapter 1. The autumn wind blew with a chilling rustle. Long Xiao, holding a cup of hot milk tea, walked briskly toward the Liu Group building where his wife, Liu Qian, worked. As a son-in-law, he had always made an effort to please his wife. He hoped this first cup of milk tea in the autumn would earn him a moment of tenderness from her. Perhaps it might even allow him a chance to kiss her. Thinking of this, a smile spread across his face, and he couldn't help but whistle twice. Just then, he noticed a car shaking by the side of the road. The license plate seemed familiar. After thinking for a moment, he realized that it was his wife Liu Qian's new car. Could it be? No, that's impossible. Liu Qian had always been as pure as jade and had refused to be intimate with him during their 3 years of marriage. How could she? Although he thought this, he still walked closer. Peering through the car window, he saw his wife, Liu Qian, sitting in the back seat, accompanied by Markuan, the eldest son of the Ma family, with whom she had been very close. Long Xiao's mind went blank, as if struck by a thunderbolt. He let out a furious roar and frantically yanked at the car door, but it wouldn't budge. Seeing a stick on the ground nearby, his eyes turned bloodshot as he grabbed it, preparing to smash the window. At that moment, Markuan flashed a grin at Long Xiao, climbed into the driver's seat, started the car, and accelerated toward him. Long Xiao's body was sent flying, crashing hard onto the hood of a nearby car. He felt his body break apart, his consciousness slipping away. He wanted to rise but everything spun, leaving him powerless. In the confusion, he saw the car door open. Liu Qian got out, straightened her clothes and hair, and transformed back into the cold, aloof beauty she always was, wrapping her arm around Markuan's and swaying her hips toward him. Shit! Markuan looked at Long Xiao and sneered, "You're still alive. Perfect. While you're still conscious, let him sign the divorce agreement." Liu Qian immediately took out a document and waved it in front of Long Xiao. She spoke elegantly, "Waste. Look carefully. This is the divorce agreement. You've been living as a son-in-law for 3 years, and because you're impotent, unable to fulfill your duties as a husband, you're voluntarily divorcing and leaving with nothing." Impotent? Voluntary divorce. Long Xiao's heart raced with anger, cursing endlessly in his mind. He was strong and healthy, but Liu Qian had told him she wanted to test his sincerity, always making excuses for separate rooms. This bitch had pretended to be pure in front of him, but outside, she was this loose, spending the day in a car with a man. Long Xiao wanted to say something, but no words came. He could only watch helplessly as Liu Qian dipped his finger into his own blood and pressed it onto the divorce papers, signing his name. While doing this, she happily said, "When I first married you, I was only using you. The Liu family has a rule: daughters must give up their inheritance unless they marry into the family. Now that I've secured my position as the heir of the Liu family, you, the useless one, should disappear. Markuan is my true match. We've already invited Dr. Shui, and tonight, we'll attend old Qin's birthday banquet at Wangyu Mountain Villa to help him with his illness." Markuan wrapped his arm around Liu Qian's waist, unbuckled his pants, and urinated on Long Xiao's body. As he urinated, he laughed and said, "Once Dr. Shui cures old Qin, we'll gain his favor, and we'll become the hottest rising stars in Yun City. Long Xiao, you're a waste. If you survive this, we'll make sure to invite you to watch our wedding." He slapped his urine-covered hand on Long Xiao's face, laughed with Liu Qian, and walked away. Long Xiao was devastated, shouting in fury. He spat blood and collapsed unconscious. His mind spiraled into darkness as he felt himself falling into an endless abyss. He knew he was dying. But deep inside, a voice screamed with defiance. "I can't die. I must get revenge. I'll make these 2 dogs pay the price. I'll send them to hell." It was as if his will had awakened a divine force. The terrifying fall stopped, and a voice echoed in his mind. Chaos Spirit Pearl, Awakening. He couldn't open his eyes, but he clearly felt something in his abdomen glowing like a star. The light from the star spread like gentle ripples throughout his body, and wherever it touched, the pain vanished, replaced by an indescribable sense of wonder. It felt as though he had returned to the dawn of time, the beginning of life. Spirit Pearl, Level 1, Initial Stage. Gained the Primordial Breathing Technique. Primordial Breathing Technique. Immediately, a mysterious breathing mantra appeared in his mind. His consciousness began to follow the mantra, starting his cultivation. Spirit Pearl, Level 1, Evolution Stage. Gained ancient medical skills. As he continued practicing the primordial breathing technique, the Spirit Pearl evolved. Xiao was amazed to find his mind filled with an immense wealth of medical knowledge. Excited, he continued cultivating. Who are you? Why are you lying on my car? Just as he was immersed in the joy of cultivation, ready to go deeper, his consciousness was suddenly interrupted by a cold voice. Xiao opened his eyes to see a woman, like a fairy from the Moon Palace, staring at him. Her cold, beautiful face was framed by a pair of autumn water-like eyes, gazing at him curiously. He felt she was familiar. Wasn't this the #1 socialite in Yin City, the woman everyone pursued, Qin Shuanyue, the eldest daughter of the Qin family? He wanted to say something, but then the system prompt sounded in his mind again. Spirit Pearl, Level 1, Completed Stage. Gained X-ray vision. X-ray vision. Xiao blinked and instinctively looked at Qin Shuanyue. Then, the exquisite clothes covering her delicate body seemed to dissolve like sand in the wind under his gaze. This is too beautiful. Xiao couldn't help but gape. Pervert. In a shrill voice, Qin Shuanyue slapped Xiao's face, interrupting his gaze. Realizing what had happened, Xiao quickly covered his face. He finally understood the situation. The car he had destroyed was actually Qin Shuanyue's. This expensive sports car could easily cost hundreds of thousands to repair. How could a son-in-law who had been kicked out afford such a price? Xiao hurriedly jumped off the car, wanting to explain, but suddenly, a roar sounded from a side door. A group of fierce-looking bodyguards in suits surrounded him. The leader, with a leopard head and ringed eyes, radiated killing intent. He stared at Xiao and gritted his teeth. "Miss, is this brat bothering you? Let me tear him apart." Xiao was startled, and quickly shouted, "It's a misunderstanding. I was actually treating Miss Qin." The man with the leopard head and ringed eyes, the head of Qin's security team, Ling Qian, a real martial artist, sneered. "A wayward son, still trying to defend yourself. Get him." "Wait." Qin Shuanyue stopped Ling Qian, then looked at Xiao curiously and asked, "You can treat illnesses?" Xiao glanced deeply at Qin Shuanyue. With his X-ray vision combined with the ancient medical skills, he drew a confident conclusion. He swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes. Forgive me for being forward, Miss Qin, but you're seriously ill." Chapter 2. Asshole. How dare you curse the young lady? Upon hearing Xiao's words, Ling Qian roared in anger, clenching his fist like an iron hammer and swinging it towards Xiao's face. This time, Qin Shuanyue did not stop him. She even blamed herself for asking that question out of curiosity earlier. How could such a scoundrel, who only stared at her body, possibly be a doctor? All she got in return was the disgraceful, "You are seriously ill." It was self-inflicted humiliation. A reckless fool spouting nonsense. It's better if Ling Qian teaches him a lesson. Xiao looked at the gritting teeth and angry eyes of Ling Qian and said coldly, "You've practiced the wrong technique. Your meridians are damaged. You should never use energy. If you don't restrain yourself, are you looking to explode and die?" "What did you say?" Ling Qian's muscular body trembled violently, and his fist unconsciously stopped. Xiao snorted coldly, "Every time you practice, especially late at night, does your Mingmen acupoint and left kidney acupoint hurt like ice needles?" "How do you know?" Ling Qian's face changed color. Xiao sneered, "You thought it was due to insufficient internal energy, so you forcibly circulated energy to break through. The pain turns into burning pain, and when it gets worse, you faint, right?" This time, panic appeared on Ling Qian's face. The rebellious look in his eyes vanished, replaced by an expression of longing for salvation. Sir, you are so brilliant." Before Ling Qian could finish speaking, a deep, old voice echoed from a distance. Xiao's heart stirred, and he quickly turned his head to look. "Grandfather! Old patriarch!" Qin Shuanyue and Ling Qian had already rushed to the elder's side. "Grandfather, how are you feeling?" Qin Shuanyue asked, concerned, holding the elder's arm. The elder didn't speak, but his discerning eyes were fixed on Long Xiao, trying to see through him. Old patriarch, this person is suspicious. Please be cautious. Ling Qian whispered. The elder laughed loudly. There are many unusual people in the world. You think he is strange because you don't recognize an expert. This young friend, I am Qin Wangzu. May I ask your honorable name? It turned out that he was the legendary Qin Wangzu, the patriarch of the Qin family who stood at the pinnacle of power in Yun City. Yun City was filled with aristocratic families, each vying for dominance. But the only family truly at the top of the power hierarchy was the Qin family. The Qin family's rise to greatness was thanks to this legendary elder. Although he had retired, when people in Yun City mentioned the Qin family, they would first think of this elder. Then came his granddaughter, the beautiful and talented Qin Xuanyue. Families like Marquan S., who were adored by Liu Qian, were merely one of the many partners of the Qin family, a minor player in comparison. The Qin family could lift or crush any of these families at will. Long Xiao, the son-in-law of Liu Qian, was not qualified to meet Qin Wangzu before. But now, seeing him, it was obvious that this meeting was extraordinary. The elder's eyes were sharp enough to see through everything. If Long Xiao hadn't just received the inheritance of the Spirit Pearl, an ordinary person would have bowed before him after just one glance. Although Qin Wangzu appeared healthy for his age, much stronger than most elderly people, Long Xiao observed carefully and his expression changed slightly. Young friend, have you discovered something? Qin Wangzu asked with concern. Long Xiao glanced at the traditional medicine hall behind Qin Wangzu and sneered, a terminal illness. No cure. Qin Xuanyue gritted her teeth and said, Grandfather doesn't have a terminal illness. How dare you curse my grandfather? Be careful, or I won't go easy on you. She clenched her fists, looking as if she were ready to fight. Long Xiao looked at Qin Xuanyue and sneered, what if I can treat him? Qin Xuanyue's legs softened, and she excitedly asked, really? Ling Qian questioned, but you just said it's incurable. Incurable doesn't mean I can't treat him, Long Xiao said seriously, looking at Qin Wangzu. I have 3 conditions. Qin Wangzu's eyes lit up. I know my time is running out, and many doctors have given up. I've lived a more extraordinary life than most people, but there are still a few wishes left unfulfilled. Even an ant cherishes its life, and I, naturally, wish to live a few more years. If you can make me live past this year, I'll agree to anything, as long as it doesn't violate common decency. Long Xiao nodded and looked at Qin Xuanyue, saying, First, I want you. Qin Xuanyue blushed and gritted her teeth, as long as you cure my grandfather, I'll give it to you. Cough. Long Xiao realized she misunderstood and quickly clarified, I mean, I want you to stop pursuing the matter of the broken car. Consider the car damage as my medical fee. Qin Xuanyue's face turned redder, and she spat, Fine, the car is yours. Second, Long Xiao remembered what Liu Qian and Marquan said when they left and his expression darkened. Tonight, Qin Lao is hosting a birthday banquet at Wangyu Mountain Villa, right? I want to attend as a guest of honor. Qin Wangzu excitedly said, If you can cure my illness, of course, you will be the most honored guest. I eagerly await that. Third. Long Xiao hesitated for a moment, still feeling somewhat unsure. Third, I'll tell you after I cure him. Don't worry, Qin Lao, I won't put you in a difficult position. That won't do. Qin Xuanyue frowned and said, If you have any conditions, you'd better say them now. What if? Qin Wangzu raised his hand to stop Qin Xuanyue and said cheerfully, I've agreed to it. Can you now tell me your full name? Long Xiao. Mr. Long, what should we do next? Long Xiao said, Prepare a set of silver needles. You will soak your body in warm water. Then, give me a quiet room. Qin Wangzu said, That is simple. If Mr. Long is bothered, please come to the Qin family. Long Xiao thought for a moment, then nodded. Qin Wangzu looked at Qin Xuanyue and said, Ling Qian, drive me to the Qin family. Little girl, take Mr. Long with you. Qin Xuanyue glanced at Long Xiao coldly and reluctantly nodded. The convoy set off. Long Xiao sat in the passenger seat of Qin Xuanyue's sports car, a sweet, cold fragrance enveloping the small space. Long Xiao looked at her beautiful, almost unreal face, feeling as if he were in a dream. You'd better not be scamming. My grandfather has agreed to your 3 conditions. Now, I'll give you 3 warnings. Long Xiao said, Please go ahead, Miss Qin. First, if you can't cure him, the car damage is 50,000. As a discount, I'll say it's 100,000. Long Xiao's face twitched. Is there a discount on the damage? Second, you wanted to be a guest of honor at the banquet, right? If you fail, I'll publicly humiliate you. Long Xiao's face darkened. What is the third? Qin Shuanyue's expression turned proud. Third, you'd better know how to swim, because after the public humiliation, I'll throw you into the Yangtze River outside the city. Got it. As expected of Yun City's first young lady. Such arrogance. Long Xiao nodded. Got it. Anything else? Qin Shuanyue gritted her teeth. One more thing, watch your eyes, don't look around. Reluctantly, Long Xiao withdrew his gaze. He had to admit, she was a natural beauty. But this time, he was merely admiring her, not using his X-ray vision. After observing 3 people earlier, he realized that using the X-ray vision consumed a lot of mental energy. This car is too comfortable. Qin Shuanyue's scent is amazing. He yawned, suddenly feeling very sleepy, and closed his eyes. At this moment, in a seemingly low-key Volkswagen Phaeton ahead, Qin Wangzu furrowed his brows. A ruthless aura emanated from his wise, worldly eyes. Long Xiao. Before the treatment, I want all of his information. Yes. The driver, Ling Qian, responded, his eyes flashing with killing intent. If he is truly a rare expert and cures the old patriarch, I'll give him my life. If he is just a scoundrel scamming people, I'll take his life. Chapter 3. The Qin family's old mansion was a quiet, ancient-style building located in the heart of the city, offering tranquility amidst the bustle. Long Xiao was personally escorted by Qin Shuanyue to a quiet guest room. After closing the door, he couldn't wait to sit cross-legged on the bed, following the Hongmeng breathing technique to clear his mind and focus inward. Earlier, he had been in a rush and didn't have time to investigate it carefully. Now, he wanted to understand what this mysterious chaos spirit pearl inside him really was. As he practiced the breathing technique, his mind gradually became clear, and his primordial spirit aligned with his body. Then he saw a rolling cloud of mist in his dantian. In the mist, there was a faint light that resembled a tiny ember. This light was weak, but it persisted through the dense fog, unwavering like a flame that couldn't be extinguished by the wind. Could this mist be chaos chi? Is this faint light the spirit pearl? After failing to probe the mist thoroughly, Long Xiao focused his consciousness on the ember-like spirit pearl. The spirit pearl was currently at the first major stage of development. From the initial, to the evolved, to this major stage, he had received 3 rewards: the Hongmeng breathing technique, ancient medical skills, and the X-ray vision. With his new abilities, Long Xiao didn't dare to be careless. On the street earlier, he had hesitated to treat Qin Wangzu because he feared that, as a beginner, his first attempt might fail. If that happened, with the Qin family's power in Yun City, he wouldn't survive the night. In the quiet room, he focused intently on learning the mysterious and profound ancient medical skills in his mind. 2 hours later, a satisfied expression appeared on his face. He realized that the X-ray vision and ancient medical skills were a perfect match. With the guidance of his X-ray vision, he could easily apply the ancient medical skills to treat various ailments. Gaining confidence, he then turned his attention to his cultivation. After reaching the first major stage, there was still a complete stage to achieve. Long Xiao was eager to know what rewards he would receive upon reaching the complete stage. Since it was still early, he decided to let Qin Wangzu soak a little longer to soften his meridians, which would help in the treatment. He then focused entirely on his cultivation. Soon, he felt a surge of heat in his body, and sweat began to bead on his forehead. His clothes felt like sticky armor, uncomfortable and suffocating. So, he stripped off completely. As he delved deeper into his cultivation, he felt his pores open, expelling the impurities from his body. His body gradually became purer. His handsome face slowly began to radiate a dignified, noble aura. "Miss, look." In the evening, a grim-faced Ling Qian handed Qin Shuanyue an investigation report. After reading it, Qin Shuanyue's face immediately hardened with anger. "Do we still need to show this to grandfather?" Ling Qian asked with a bitter smile. "No need to burden grandpa any further. You come with me, we're going to deal with that scum." Qin Shuanyue angrily said as she rushed out with Ling Qian, heading toward Long Xiao's room. She knew that her grandfather had a terminal illness and had already prepared herself for the worst, but she couldn't help but still harbor some hope. Could a miracle happen? Could someone intervene and cure her grandfather's illness? Even if it meant extending his life for just a few more years, it would be worth it. She was willing to sacrifice anything for that. Even though she deeply disliked Long Xiao, if he wanted her body as a condition, she would agree without hesitation. She placed all her hopes on Long Xiao. But her dream shattered in an instant. Ling Qian's investigation report tore away Long Xiao's disguise. Raised in an orphanage, dropped out of university, mingled in bars, living off women's tips because of his good looks. By chance, he met Liu Qian, the eldest daughter of the Liu family, bought her drinks, and became a son-in-law to the Liu family. 3 years of marriage, lazy and useless, accomplished nothing. Born with a disability, unable to perform, voluntarily divorced from Liu Qian, leaving empty-handed. It was said to be a voluntary divorce, but anyone with clear eyes could see he was kicked out by Liu Qian. This good-for-nothing, incompetent, and disgraced scoundrel. Just recently kicked out by a wealthy family, and now he dared to scam the Qin family. How dare he make a joke out of Grandpa's illness? Qin Shuanyue had never felt so furious in her life. Anger mixed with impulse caused her chest to heave with intensity. She swore she would kill this scoundrel. Dragon, get out here. She couldn't be bothered to waste any more words. She kicked open the door and charged in. Spirit Pearl, first major complete stage. Tiger leopard body. At the same time, a voice rang in Long Xiao's mind. Tiger leopard body. After the energy transformation from the Spirit Pearl, he felt like a fierce tiger or leopard, filled with vigorous power. Suddenly, a woman's piercing scream reached his ears. Long Xiao was startled and quickly opened his eyes, seeing Qin Shuanyue staring at him as though she had seen a ghost. What's wrong? Long Xiao hurriedly got out of bed and asked with concern. Don't come near. Qin Shuanyue screamed like a little chicken chased by a butcher, rushing out of the room. Long Xiao then realized that he was completely naked. But since they were all adults, did Qin Shuanyue really need to react like this? Could it be true, as the rumors say, that she had kept herself pure and never touched any man? Was this proud young lady still a virgin? You hear me? Long Xiao quickly grabbed his clothes to explain, but suddenly, he heard a thunderous roar outside, followed by the door slamming open, and Ling Qian charged in. Scum! Die! Seeing Long Xiao in disarray, Ling Qian, like a wild boar, charged at him, eyes bloodshot. The force of his punch was terrifying. As expected, Qin Wangzu's personal bodyguard and the #1 fighter in Yin City had remarkable strength. But Long Xiao suddenly felt a surge of excitement. Tiger leopard body? Time to test it out. Kill him. Kill this scoundrel. This fraudster. Remembering the shocking scene earlier, Qin Shuanyue shouted at the room in a rage. She now felt so desperate she wanted to cry. She felt like she had seen something she shouldn't have, and that she was now tainted. Thankfully, Ling Qian, a powerful warrior, was here. The scoundrel would have no way to escape. He would die without a trace. Suddenly, with a crash, the window shattered, and a figure flew out, groaning. Qin Shuanyue rushed over and began kicking, shouting, I'll kill you, you scum! Fraudster! Poof! Miss, stop kicking. It's me. The person on the ground spat out blood and looked completely defeated. Ling Qian. Qin Shuanyue was stunned. Qin Shuanyue, do you know your crime? At this moment, a stern voice came from behind. Qin Shuanyue turned around and saw Long Xiao, now dressed, exuding a righteous aura, his eyes sharp and full of authority. The imposing presence made everyone feel self-reflective. Qin Shuanyue suddenly felt like she had made a huge mistake and stammered, what crime did I commit? Long Xiao coldly replied, you entered my private room without permission, spied on my naked body. This is arrogance. For your transgression, I won't pursue it this time. But I hope you will learn your lesson and never repeat it. Otherwise, the consequences are yours to bear. With that, he strode toward the room where Qin Wangzu was soaking. His voice echoed in the air, resonating deeply in her mind. Qin Shuanyue couldn't stop hearing it. I entered without permission, I spied, I was arrogant. She stared at Long Xiao's back, suddenly feeling him towering with an imposing presence. What are you waiting for, miss? He is going to assassinate the old man. Go stop him. Ling Qian, curled up on the floor, groaned in pain. His words were like a wake-up call to Qin Shuanyue. She shouted and rushed toward Long Xiao's room. Long Xiao grinned, quickly slipping into Qin Wangzu's room and locking the door behind him. Qin Shuanyue couldn't break open the door. Panicked, she cried as tears streamed down her face. "You bastard! Qin Shuanyue will never forgive you. I'll have you torn apart." Shaking, she pulled out an emergency alarm and, with tear-filled eyes, pressed the red button. Instantly, an alarm echoed through the entire mansion. Security personnel, stationed at every corner, rushed toward the room. Chapter 4. Surround him. Don't let him get away. You bastard, I won't stop until I chop you into pieces and feed you to the dogs. Ling Qian curled up on the ground, staring at Qin Wangzu's room, and screamed in grief and anger like a dying beast. He loyally protected Qin Wangzu and prevented many assassinations from masters. He never expected that he would suffer a setback today and fall into the hands of a pretty boy like Long Xiao who had been kicked out of the company. What made it even harder for him to let go was that he still didn't understand how he had lost. Just now in the room, he used a fatal attack, and it was reasonable that Long Xiao would definitely not be spared. But when he saw a strange smile suddenly appear on Long Xiao's face, he felt a sharp pain in his heart before he could react, and then he flew out. He didn't even see how Long Xiao made his move. "Captain, are you okay?" Several loyal men came over and asked worriedly. Two of them squatted down and tried to support him. "Don't move!" Ling Qian shouted hurriedly. He felt his whole body stiff, as if he had a heart attack and couldn't move. "Pass my order, everyone, be alert, don't let him get away. This guy." Ling Qian gritted his teeth and said this. Suddenly, his whole body felt lighter. The blood that had been blocked from flowing out of his heart seemed to have opened a floodgate and began to flow happily again. And it's smoother than before. He jumped up, not only feeling refreshed, but also the acupuncture points that had been damaged by practicing the exercises seemed to have become unblocked. What's going on? He was surprised and delighted, and without time to think, he pulled out a three-pointed thorn from his waist and rushed forward. "Miss, let me do it." He was furious and ready to break down the door. Qin Shuanyue stared at the closed door, clenched her hands, gritted her teeth, and whispered, "Don't be impulsive. Grandpa must be held hostage by the Long Man in there. If we break into their house rashly, the Long Man might get desperate and hurt Grandpa. What should we do then? We can only persuade them to surrender." Qin Shuanyue grabbed the loudspeaker from a nearby security guard and shouted into the room, "Long Xiao, listen. You have been surrounded. There are at least 30 bodyguards here. They are all iron-blooded warriors who have just come down from the battlefield. If you dare to hurt my grandfather, they will definitely not let you go. I know that you were kicked out by Liu Qian today, and you were upset, so you want to do something big to prove yourself. We in the Qin family have no grudges against you. As long as you don't hurt my grandfather, I will agree to anything you want." In the room, Long Xiao's lazy voice rang out, "Can you really promise me anything?" Qin Shuanyue said hurriedly, "Of course. Do you want money? The last thing our Qin family lacks is money. How about 10 million, no, 50 million? Seeing that Long Xiao did not respond, Qin Shuanyue said again, 100 million. I know you come from a poor family, and you don't have a job after divorcing Liu Qian. With this 100 million, it's enough for you to live a carefree life." There was no sound in the room. Qin Shuanyue wanted to say something, but Ling Qian gritted his teeth and said, "Miss, don't waste your words on him. Let me do it. Listen up, Long. When I count to 10, let the old man out. Otherwise, I will break the door. If you dare to hurt even a hair of mine, I will make sure you regret coming into this world." Ling Qian began the countdown. Dozens of bodyguards at the scene stared at the door and windows, holding electric batons, rubber sticks and blades tightly in their hands. Although Qin Shuanyue felt that something was wrong, this was the only way since things had come to this point. She must see Grandpa as soon as possible. I hope that bastard Long Xiao won't just go all out and burn everything down. 3, 2, 1. Ling Qian clutched the three-edged spike, shouted the last word, and let out a loud cry, preparing to break the door. Suddenly, the door opened. Qin Wangzu appeared in front of him. "Old man, are you okay?" Ling Qian was overjoyed. Seeing Long Xiao standing behind Qin Wangzu, he thought that Long Xiao was holding Qin Wangzu hostage from behind, and immediately shouted angrily, "Long, get out." He held the triangular spike, ready to charge at any time. Qin Huangzu said in a deep voice, "How outrageous. Don't step back yet." Qin Shuangyue also hurriedly said, "Ling Qian, don't be impulsive." She was also certain that Long Xiao was standing behind her, threatening her grandfather with some deadly weapon. At least her grandfather in front of her looked fine, so she felt a little relieved. Ling Qian gritted his teeth and stepped back, but his eyes were fixed on Long Xiao, like a wild beast ready to pounce at any time. Qin Shuangyue heaved a sigh of relief, trying to keep herself calm, and said, "Long Xiao, 100 million is not enough, I can add more." Long Xiao stood behind Qin Huangzu, smiled at Qin Shuangyue, and said leisurely, "It's not enough to just have money, you also need a wife." Qin Shuangyue was speechless. Is this guy so shameless that he wants to threaten me to marry him? Thinking of the scene she had just seen in the room, her heart suddenly surged, her pretty face flushed, and she gritted her teeth, unable to speak. Qin Huangzu's face showed joy, and he said, "Mr. Long, do you want to marry Shuangyue? I'll make the decision." "Grandpa, you." Qin Shuangyue was struck by lightning. "My grandfather loves me the most. Is he willing to sacrifice himself to this gangster just to save his life?" Her face was full of disbelief. Ling Qian gritted his teeth and said, "Long, what kind of man are you if you hide behind this old man? Come out and fight me if you have the guts." Long Xiao sneered and said, "I gave you face, didn't I? If I had known earlier, I shouldn't have cured your illness." "What did you say?" Ling Qian was stunned and subconsciously touched his chest. "Don't you understand yet?" Qin Huangzu looked at Ling Qian and said unhappily, "Mr. Long punched you just now, but he was actually opening up your acupuncture points in disguise." He took a deep breath, turned around and bowed deeply to Long Xiao, and said excitedly, "I feel much better now. Thank you, Mr. Long, for your rejuvenation and life-saving grace." Qin Shuangyue's eyes widened in surprise, and she said incredulously, "Grandpa, what did you say?" "He really?" Qin Huangzu nodded and said solemnly, "I declare that from now on, the Qin family will respect you, sir. This is the supreme card that allows access to all Qin family businesses. Please accept it, sir." He bent down and handed over a black and gold card with both hands respectfully. Long Xiao knew that with this card, he would become the VIP guest tonight, so he nodded and took it without hesitation. Qin Huangzu said excitedly, "What are you still standing there for? Put away your weapons and greet the sir." The bodyguards looked at each other in disbelief. Ling Qian touched his chest, looked at Long Xiao and said hesitantly, "Did you really heal my hidden injury?" Although he was still full of doubts, he was already 80% convinced in his heart because he felt that the blood in his body had never been so smooth as it was now. Long Xiao sneered and said, "In such a hurry, I only cured 8 out of 10. We'll talk about the remaining 2 out of 10 when we have time." Ling Qian was ecstatic, knelt on one knee, and said excitedly, "Thank you, sir. Ling Qian greets you." The other dozens of bodyguards knelt down hurriedly and shouted, "Greetings, sir." Qin Shuangyue felt a little embarrassed when she saw the bodyguards kneeling on the ground. Qin Huangzu smiled and said, "Mr. Long used ancient medical skills to relieve my pain and prolong my life. This favor is greater than heaven. Shuangyue, why don't you thank Mr. Long on behalf of your grandfather?" Chapter 5. Qin Shuangyue saw that her grandfather was smiling ambiguously, and thought that he was really planning to match her with Long Xiao. How is this possible? She is the eldest daughter of the Qin family, and he is just an abandoned son-in-law. Qin Shuangyue was extremely reluctant and wanted to warn Long Xiao in person not to indulge in such wishful thinking, but she suddenly didn't have the courage to look at Long Xiao's face. Besides, this guy cured my grandfather's illness after all. I could only lower my head and say, "Thank you, Mr. Long." The voice was so low that even I couldn't hear it. Qin Huangzu looked at Long Xiao and smiled, "Mr. Long, I won't say much to thank you. The birthday banquet at Wangyu Villa should be almost ready, please come in. I'll have a few drinks with you." Long Xiao smiled and said, "Mr. Qin, you can't drink yet. Your illness has been around for too long. I've only cured half of it. I'll cure the remaining half later. I have something to take care of. See you at the banquet." After saying that, he turned around and left. Qin Huangzu looked at Long Xiao's back and shouted, "Mr. Long, I'll be waiting for you at Wangyu Villa. Since I can't drink, let Shuangyue drink a few glasses with you." When these words came out, Ling Qian and the others opened their eyes wide in surprise. Everyone in Yuncheng knows that Qin Shuanyue is the apple of Qin Wangzu's eye. Under normal circumstances, if Qin Wangzu knew that someone dared to let his precious granddaughter accompany drinking, the old man could destroy the other person's family with a stomp of his feet. Now, he offered to let his precious granddaughter drink with him. Grandpa. Qin Shuanyue said coquettishly, "What are you talking about? Why would I drink with him? I can't drink." Qin Wangzu was all smiles. Seeing Long Xiao walking away, he raised his voice and said, "Mr. Long, don't you have one more condition? Let's talk about it, even if it's 100. Long Xiao raised his hand to signal. Night is falling. Neon lights are coming on. He left the Qin family manor and walked towards the Liu family villa alone. The street lights lengthened his shadow, and his expression was a mixture of sadness and joy. Amidst the bleakness and loneliness, there was also a sense of relief from rebirth. A single family building came into view in the distance. That was where Liu Qian and her mother Yang Chunhua lived. Once upon a time, it was also their home that Long Xiao cherished very much. It's not that he didn't doubt the authenticity of Liu Qian's feelings for him. The reason why he had been deceived and was willing to be humble and serve Liu Qian was because no matter what, Liu Qian finally gave him a home. 20 years ago, on that evening when the wind was howling and snow was flying, his mother left him at the gate of the Yuncheng welfare home, said goodbye in tears, walked into the cold wind and snow, and never came back. He lost his mother, his only relative, and his home. He didn't say it on the surface, but deep down he longed for home, just like a wanderer in the cold wind and snow longing for a warm stove. Therefore, although sometimes he suspected that Liu Qian was using him, she married him but refused to let him touch her, not just to test him, but for some other reason. But Long Xiao would rather choose to believe it. Until today, when he saw Liu Qian and Marquan having sex in the car on the street and heard her say that she was using him, Long Xiao finally woke up from his dream. 3 years of marriage seemed like a dream. If Liu Qian explained it to him in person, Long Xiao would leave voluntarily and give his blessings. But Liu Qian shouldn't have teamed up with her adulterer to almost kill him after he discovered their affair. This proves that in Liu Qian's heart, he is not only a tool to be used, but also an ant with a worthless life. So he proposed to Qin Wangzu that he could attend the birthday banquet as a VIP guest. He wanted to let Liu Qian know that he had dignity and was not an ant that could be trampled on by anyone. And the urine that Marquan peed on him, he swore that he would make Marquan drink it himself. As he was thinking, he came to the door of the villa. This place, which he once regarded as his home and was very familiar with, now became extremely unfamiliar. Even full of irony. If it wasn't for taking back what his mother left him, he would never have been willing to set foot there again. Pushing the door open, the villa was dark. As expected, Liu Qian must have gone to Wangyu Villa with Marquan to attend Qin Wangzu's birthday banquet. Her not being at home made it convenient for Long Xiao to do his work. He walked into his bedroom with ease, took out a small old sandalwood box from under the bed, opened it, and found a black jade pendant inside. It was dark and heavy, and there was nothing special about it. But because it was the last and only thing his mother left him, he had always cherished it very much. After a moment of distraction, he put away the box and prepared to leave. Suddenly, a lazy voice came from outside the door. "Qian, are you back?" Immediately afterwards, the door was pushed open, and Liu Qian's mother, Yang Chunhua, Long Xiao's mother-in-law, appeared in front of him. "Is it you? How dare you, a piece of trash, come back? What did you steal from us? You've been kicked out by my daughter, put our things down." When Yang Chunhua saw the box in Long Xiao's hand, she thought he had come back to steal something, so she immediately pointed at his nose and shouted at him. That kind of superior aura, as if Long Xiao was a dog in their family. Long Xiao knew that from the beginning to the end, this mother and daughter had never treated him as a human being. Liu Qian treated me like a fool, while Yang Chunhua treated me like a dog. She not only ordered me to bring her foot washing water, but also asked me to wash her feet and socks. Sometimes she would also leave her underwear to wash herself. Once, she was dissatisfied with the cleaning and even threw her underwear on her face. Before, Long Xiao had endured it all for the sake of this hard-earned home. Now, looking at the domineering look of the old woman in front of him, Long Xiao felt his blood boiling, as if a great force was about to be released. He gritted his teeth and said, "I don't want any of your dirty stuff. But of course I have to take back what belongs to me." Having said that, he put the box away in front of Yang Chunhua. "You bastard, you stole something and you dare to talk back to me. Get down on your knees." Yang Chunhua was furious. She rolled up her sleeves and rushed towards Long Xiao with her arms and legs bared. Kneeling was her usual method of punishing Long Xiao. Whenever she saw the grown man Long Xiao kneeling in front of her, she would feel a pleasure from the bottom of her heart. In her mind, Long Xiao was still the good-for-nothing who allowed himself to be beaten and scolded. To dare to contradict her was simply outrageous. She must teach Long Xiao a lesson today. Who knows? Long Xiao suddenly raised his hand and slapped him hard. Bang! Yang Chunhua was caught off guard and was knocked to the bed by a slap. You hit me. How dare you, a loser, hit me? She covered her face, full of disbelief. You old witch, you don't treat me like a human being. Beating you is too light a punishment. Long Xiao looked at Yang Chunhua and began to untie his belt. Yang Chunhua panicked all of a sudden, shrank back, and said, "What are you doing? You useless bastard, don't mess around." Chapter 6. Long Xiao just suddenly remembered that he needed to change his clothes. Looking at Yang Chunhua's expression, he sneered and said, "What are you dreaming about, you old idiot? Get out of here." He pushed Yang Chunhua aside, picked up a new set of clothes from the bed and changed into them. Yang Chunhua gritted her teeth and said, "You useless bastard. My daughter is right not to want you. You are not worthy of my daughter at all. My daughter and young Master Markuan have gone to attend Mr. Chen's birthday party. After tonight, they will be very successful. And you, if you leave our home, you will be a stray dog that no one wants." Long Xiao showed a sarcastic expression on his face and sneered, "Really? Then I'll tell you, soon, your daughter and the eldest son of the Mar family in your eyes will kneel down and beg me. Just wait and see." After saying that, he turned around and left. Yang Chunhua pointed at Long Xiao's back and cursed. After leaving the villa area, Long Xiao felt more relaxed than ever before. He hailed a taxi on the side of the road and headed straight to Wang Yu Villa. At the same time, at the gate of Wang Yu Villa, luxury cars are on display and celebrities gather. Because Qin Wangzu and the main figures of the Qin family had not arrived yet, all the guests who came to the banquet gathered at the gate and waited. Even though they are usually high and mighty and have noble status, here, in front of Qin Wangzu, they are just a group of minions. They were looking forward to it, hoping to be the first to rush up to greet Qin Wangzu when he arrived. If I am lucky enough to open the car door for Qin Wangzu, it will be considered a big win for tonight. Liu Qian wore a high-end evening gown, holding Markuan's arm, like a charming night rose, swaying among a group of bigwigs. She naturally would not miss this rare opportunity to expand resources and connections. Seeing these people's eyes falling on her with greed in their eyes, Liu Qian appeared shy but couldn't help but puff out her chest. She has always been confident when dealing with men. She is confident that she can control Long Xiao before, Markuan now, and these seemingly high-ranking bosses in front of her. Becoming the heir of the Liu family and the future head of the Liu family could not satisfy her ambition. Deep down in her heart, she would surpass Qin Shuanyue and become the queen of Yuncheng sooner or later. By then, she will make all the outstanding men in Yuncheng fall at her feet. "Ms. Liu, I heard that you divorced your married husband today. Is that true?" A bald middle-aged man glanced at the whiteness of Liu Qian's chest and asked teasingly. These words immediately attracted the attention of people around. "Ms. Liu, I heard that your husband, Long Xiao, is congenitally impotent. Have you really been married for 3 years and never done anything? Gender relations, marital secrets." The people who were waiting boringly became more excited. "That dragon roar looked quite mighty and handsome, but I didn't expect it to be so useless, like a silver wax spear head. To have such a beauty like Miss Liu guarding her, but to be able to do nothing but watch, this dragon roar is simply a waste of a gift. It's simply a disgrace to men." Listening to the discussions around her, Liu Qian looked sad and pitiful. She wanted to say something when suddenly her cell phone rang. "Excuse me, everyone. I have to take a call. It's my mother." Liu Qian pressed the answer button, and immediately Yang Chunhua's angry voice came from the phone. "Qianqian, something terrible has happened. That bastard Long Xiao actually came back to steal things while you were away. After I found out, not only did he not admit his fault, he even dared to hit me. Qianqian, you and Master Mar must catch that bastard and give him a good beating to vent my anger." Listening to her mother's shouting on the phone, Liu Qian was furious. She didn't expect Long Xiao to be so bold. It would have been fine if he had just stolen something, but he actually had the guts to hit her mother. This guy was kicked out by me and he is going crazy because of the gain and loss. Everyone, it is indeed as you have heard. That incompetent Long Xiao is not a man at all. I accepted him because I felt sorry for him. But unfortunately he disappointed me so much. I hope that everyone will not let him go easily if they see him, for my sake. Her sad look attracted everyone's sympathy and love. They all thought that Long Xiao was a bastard and a disgrace to men. Some people even volunteered to wait until the banquet was over to capture Long Xiao and strip him naked to expose him to the public. Ma Kuan hugged Liu Qian's waist and said proudly, "Everyone, Liu Qian has nothing to do with Long Xiao anymore. She is my fiancée now. To be honest, we have jointly prepared a special birthday gift for Mr. Qin today. I believe that it will be appreciated by Mr. Qin. When the time comes, I will ask Mr. Qin to personally find a match for us." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone congratulated him. The Ma family was quite powerful, and everyone had given Ma Kuan face. If it was true as Ma Kuan said, he and Liu Qian could be appreciated by old Qin tonight, then they would immediately become the hottest new stars in Yuncheng. For a time, Liu Qian and Ma Kuan became the center of attention. "Be quiet. I just received a call from the captain. The reason why Mr. Qin and Miss are so late is because an important guest is coming tonight. Mr. Qin and Miss are preparing gifts. The captain asked us to cheer up and get ready to welcome our distinguished guests. How disgraceful of you to make such a noise." A young man in black special operations uniform walked out of the yard and scolded with a sullen face. He is the deputy captain of the Qin family guard team, Yi Biao, who is mainly responsible for the security of Wang Yu Villa. Although he was just a bodyguard, he was a 7th-rank official in the Prime Minister's office, and no one of these wealthy tycoons dared to look down on him. Not to mention the arrival of distinguished guests. What kind of identity must this distinguished guest be that is so respected by both Mr. Qin and Miss Qin? There is no such person in Yuncheng. Could he be a big shot from the provincial capital? Everyone was surprised and secretly decided that even if they had to give up Qin Wangzu, they must find a way to please this important guest. They looked at the winding mountain road in the distance, waiting respectfully like a group of elementary school students. At this time, as a pair of car lights came closer and closer, a taxi quietly drove over and stopped in front of the crowd. Everyone was stunned. How could there be taxis in a place like this? People who come here are either rich or noble, and the worst car they drive costs at least 2 million. When everyone was confused and hesitant, Liu Qian saw the blurry figure of a man in the car window, and suddenly something happened to her. It is said that the more distinguished a person is, the more low-key he is. Could it be that the person sitting in this car is the VIP that even old Qin looks up to? Opportunity is fleeting, once lost, it will never come back. Liu Qian was overjoyed when she thought of this, and hurried to meet him. She opened the car door with both hands, bent over like a receptionist, and said with a smile, "Dear guest, please get out of the car." She deliberately bent her waist very low so that the VIP in the car could see her assets naturally and effortlessly. This trick is very useful against men. Chapter 7. Even though the person in the car was not the VIP that old Qin mentioned, those who could come here to attend the birthday banquet were all either rich or noble. At least their status was higher than Liu Qian's. So Liu Qian felt that it was right for her to take the initiative to show her goodwill. She bent over, secretly proud of her own wit. At this time, a familiar voice sounded in my ears. "Thank you, master. I'll give you 50. No need to change." Liu Qian's brain twitched and she looked up with a stiff smile, and saw Long Xiao smilingly handing 50 yuan to the taxi driver. She suspected that she was hallucinating. She rubbed her eyes with her hands and looked again. That's right. Who else could this guy be but Long Xiao, the useless husband she had used for 3 years and kicked out today? Is it you? Why are you here, you piece of shit? She opened her mouth wide, her face full of disbelief. Long Xiao got out of the car gracefully and glanced at the well-dressed big men standing at the gate not far away. Before this, any one of them was someone that Long Xiao looked up to all his life. But now, Long Xiao suddenly felt that they had become very small. Gathered together, they looked like a group of pitiful and ridiculous chickens. He retracted his gaze and fell on Liu Qian's face, sneering, "Didn't expect it. I came here to tell you." "No need to say more." Liu Qian resolutely interrupted Long Xiao and sneered, "You chased me here to tell me how much you love me, and then begged me to change my mind and not abandon you, right? I can only tell you, give up. We are officially divorced, it doesn't matter anymore." Even if you kneel down and beg me, I will never remarry you. This is Wanyu Villa, a place of wealth and nobility, not for a bitch like you to come. Get out of here if you know what's best for you. Otherwise, if you affect the mood of me and the other bosses, you will be in big trouble. The guests also thought that Long Xiao wanted to make Liu Qian kneel down and lick his ass in return, and they all laughed. Ma Kuan walked over leisurely, put his arm around Liu Qian's waist, looked at Long Xiao and said jokingly, I don't mind telling you that the goddess wife in your mind has long been mine. You chased her here so hard because you want her to change her mind, right? I can only tell you that it is impossible for her to change her mind. However, if you can perform to my satisfaction. He leaned closer to Long Xiao and lowered his voice, when we get married, how about letting you be the flower girl and watch? Mr. Ma, what are you talking about? How can this loser be qualified to attend my wedding? Liu Qian said shyly. Ma Kuan laughed loudly, no longer trying to hide his feelings. Don't you think it's funny to have him around? Looking at Long Xiao, how is it? The guests at the back understood what he meant and started laughing. As expected of Master Ma, he really knows how to have fun. Long Xiao, how do you feel when you see your wife being with Ma Xiao? Cuckold man, please give your acceptance speech. The noise and clamor, as well as all kinds of sarcastic and mocking voices, were unbearable to hear. Deputy Captain Yi Biao frowned and said unhappily, shut up. This is not a place where you can make noise. If Mr. Qin and the distinguished guest come and blame us, can you afford it? Ms. Liu, Mr. Ma, I'll give you 1 minute to sort out your personal affairs immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for expelling you as well. Liu Qian and Ma Kuan nodded hurriedly and humbly. Liu Qian gritted her teeth and said, you useless piece of shit, did you hear me? I have something important to do right now, and I don't have time to bother with you. Get out of here now. Ma Kuan gritted his teeth and said, I'll give you one chance to escape from Yuncheng. Otherwise, I'll beat you up every time I see you in the future. He clenched his fists and looked ferocious. Long Xiao's expression was very calm. Under normal circumstances, facing the ridicule of his ex-wife and the mockery of others, he would be extremely ashamed and angry, unable to raise his head. But now, he only felt a swarm of flies buzzing. He looked at Liu Qian and sneered, I'm here to tell you that forcing me to divorce is the most wrong decision you've ever made in your life. You will definitely kneel down and beg me. And you? Long Xiao looked at Ma Kuan, his eyes like knives, and he gritted his teeth and said word by word, I can spare your life, but you have to drink urine in front of everyone. What did you say? Ma Kuan was furious and gritted his teeth, are you looking for death? He was good at taekwondo and had participated in some amateur competitions and won several awards. So in his eyes, Long Xiao was just a weakling who could be easily beaten. If this wasn't the Qin family's place and there wasn't a master like Yi Biao watching nearby, he would have taken action long ago and forced Long Xiao to kneel down and talk. Long Xiao smiled slightly and said, you can choose between seeking death or drinking urine. The guests in the distance could not have imagined that Long Xiao was so stubborn. They just wanted to watch the fun and instigate him again. You dare to make Ma Xiao drink urine? You don't want to live anymore. Master Ma, teach him a lesson. Destroy this ungrateful bastard and let him know his identity. Seeing that Yi Biao had no intention of stopping him, Ma Kuan showed a cruel look in his eyes. Since Long Xiao had come to him, he would destroy him in front of everyone to establish his authority. Let these wealthy people in Yuncheng know that I am an important person. Lie down. With a roar, he swung his fist towards Long Xiao's face. This punch was very powerful, but it was just a probing move, and there was a very powerful variation hidden in it. If Long Xiao couldn't dodge, then this punch would knock him over. If Long Xiao tried to dodge, he would change his tactics in time, and what would be waiting for Long Xiao would be the even more vicious black tiger heart-ripping attack. No matter what, Ma Kuan was certain that Long Xiao was going to lie down. Long Xiao sneered and did not move. Are you scared, silly? Seeing that he didn't know how to dodge, Ma Kuan gritted his teeth and simply used all his strength. The fist was about to reach the tip of Long Xiao's nose. In the next second, Long Xiao's face would be torn into pieces. Ma Kuan was very proud. Sudden. He felt a gust of wind blowing towards his lower abdomen. Before he realized something was wrong and could react, he felt like his lower abdomen was hit by a heavy hammer. With a scream, his body flew out. Long Xiao was not in a hurry to dodge because he suddenly realized that Ma Kuan's movements were very slow. It might be fast in the eyes of others, but in his eyes, it was like slow motion. That's because he has the agility and speed of a cheetah. And the power of the tiger. So he just kicked out randomly, and was the first to arrive, and kicked Marcoon away. With a bang, Marcoon fell in front of the guests. The guests stepped back in shock, all dumbfounded. You jerk, you dare to hurt Master Mar. I'll fight you. Liu Qian reacted and pounced towards Long Xiao like a yaksha, trying to scratch Long Xiao's face. There was a hint of indifference in Long Xiao's eyes, and he directly slapped back with his hand. With a snap, Liu Qian covered her face in confusion. You slapped me. How dare you, a piece of trash like you, slap me? She looked at Long Xiao, her face full of disbelief. Chapter 8. This slap is to remind you that your days of being high and mighty and bossing me around are over. From now on, I, Long Xiao, will not be insulted. Otherwise, I'll probably slap you in the face. What did you say? You are arrogant. Liu Qian looked at the indifference and cruelty in Long Xiao's eyes, her face full of disbelief. She didn't believe that Long Xiao had really changed, but thought that he couldn't stand the stimulation and became crazy. Thinking of this, Liu Qian suddenly felt less angry, and even felt superior again. Because the more stimulation Long Xiao received, the more he valued her. She covered her face and gritted her teeth. You useless bastard, you are the one who should wake up. You and I are not from the same world at all. No matter how you try to save the relationship or prove yourself, I will never look at you again. If you don't want to die, kneel down and apologize to me and Master Mar now. Otherwise, not only us, but also the bosses here won't let you go. After hearing this, the bosses immediately surrounded Long Xiao, pointing at him and shouting, ordering him to kneel down and apologize. Long Xiao kicked Marcoon and slapped Liu Qian, which seemed to be a slap in the face of these upper-class people. A few young men bared their arms and rolled up their sleeves, staring with their eyes wide open, ready to attack Long Xiao. Long Xiao glanced casually and sneered, whoever dares to take action, Marcoon is an example. As he spoke, he took a step forward. Looking at his tall stature and cold eyes, everyone stepped back hastily. This guy is provoked and wants to go all out. Let's stay away from him. He has a worthless life, so we shouldn't fight him. These wealthy people value their lives the most and don't want to confront Long Xiao, a scoundrel. Seeing that these bosses were actually scared away by Long Xiao alone, Liu Qian was furious. Suddenly, she looked at Yi Biao in the distance and shouted, Captain Yi, this guy is deliberately causing trouble and disrupting the venue. Aren't you going to do anything about it? This sentence reminded Marcoon. He held his stomach and barely stood up, gritting his teeth and said, Yes, Captain Yi, Mr. Qin and the VIP should be here soon. We can't let this mad dog run into them. Please take action immediately and capture him for me. When the other bosses saw their savior, they all shouted excitedly. Yi Biao's face was gloomy. He stared at Long Xiao and said coldly, You are abandoned for being a gigolo. I don't care if you are crazy and want to cause trouble, but open your dog eyes and see clearly where this place is. You dare to cause trouble here, are you itching for trouble? Long Xiao said patiently, Captain Yi, right? I have no intention of offending you. You also saw that I was not the one causing the trouble. Before I even got out of the car, the adulterous couple started to speak nonsense to me. Especially the one named Mar, who was the first to attack me. I was just defending myself at best. Because Yi Biao was a member of the Qin family, Long Xiao didn't want to bother with him for the sake of Qin Wangzu and Qin Shuangyue. Besides, Yi Biao is still Ling Qian's subordinate. It would be uncultured to argue with him based on one's status. I'm not blind, of course I saw everything you said. Yi Biao said with a sneer. Long Xiao smiled and was about to praise Yi Biao, but who knew that Yi Biao's next words would make his face gloomy. It's your fault that Miss Liu and Master Mar beat you and scolded you. My fault. Long Xiao frowned. Does that mean they are justified in committing adultery? As a victim, shouldn't I fight back? Yi Biao sneered, don't you understand? Your biggest mistake is that you are powerless and inferior person. With your status, you shouldn't even come here. You are in the wrong for being here. Master Mar and Miss Liu beat you and scolded you, you deserve it. Yes, you deserve it. Captain Yi is right. Long Xiao, you are a piece of shit. What qualifications do you have to come to such a high-end place? Your poor air has stained this land. After hearing Yi Biao's words, Liu Qian and Marcoon shouted excitedly. The guests pointed at Long Xiao and shouted at him again. They were numerous and powerful, and Long Xiao looked a little pitiful alone. Long Xiao looked at Yi Biao and sneered, "So what? What should I do to satisfy you?" Yi Biao sneered, "You should kneel down and apologize. And chop off the hand that hit you." The subordinate next to him immediately pulled out a scimitar and threw it at Long Xiao's feet, shouting, "Chop it up." Long Xiao frowned, "Do you really want to force me?" Yi Biao sneered, "I'm not forcing you, but giving you a chance. This is your only chance before Mr. Qin and the distinguished guests arrive. Otherwise, it won't be as simple as just chopping off a hand." Marcoan said excitedly, "Captain Yi, how about letting me do it? Let me chop him up." Yi Biao stared at Long Xiao and said, "I'll give you a chance. I'll count to 3. If you can't do it yourself, I'll let Ma Xiao do it. By then, whether you live or die, you'll have to leave it to fate." After saying that, he began to count. 1. At the same time, several men who were also wearing black combat uniforms immediately rushed over and surrounded Long Xiao from front and back, like vicious dogs preparing to hunt, ready to attack at any time. Long Xiao stood tall, as if he was unaware of the danger at all. He looked at Yi Biao and sneered, "I admit that I am of humble status, powerless, and poor. But is this my original sin? I accept what the others present said, because they have taken all the resources and rested on the merits of their ancestors, and have long forgotten everything. But you are just a security guard for a rich family, yet you think you are a superior person and look down on me. To put it bluntly, you are just a doorman, how can you be nobler than anyone else?" The muscles at the corners of Yi Biao's eyes twitched, and he shouted loudly, "Too." Marcoan said excitedly, "You bastard, you actually dared to scold Captain Yi, you are about to die." He was ready to fight, waiting for Yi Biao to call out the last number, and then he rushed over to grab the knife. It would be too easy for Long Xiao to chop off one of his hands, so he wanted to do it himself and kill Long Xiao. Long Xiao and Yi Biao looked at each other and continued to sneer, "Kneel down and apologize to me now, and you still have a chance to stay in the Qin family. Otherwise, I promise that your career will end." Yi Biao sneered, "You piece of trash, are you qualified to decide whether I stay or go?" Long Xiao raised his eyebrows and said, "Guess why I came here?" Yi Biao sneered, "I'm not interested in knowing." 3. Get started. As soon as he finished speaking, Marcoan shouted excitedly, rushed over to pick up the knife, and used all his strength to chop down at Long Xiao's neck. Long Xiao didn't even look at him, he just kicked out casually, kicking Marcoan away again. Yi Biao was moved, "Boy, you still dare to commit crimes against the wind. Destroy him for me." Upon hearing this, the bodyguards surrounding Long Xiao roared loudly and were ready to attack together. Long Xiao snorted coldly, took out a black card, looked at Yi Biao and sneered, "Open your dog eyes and see clearly, what is this?" Yi Biao's body was shaken, and he said in disbelief, "This is the Qin family's supreme card." "Impossible, how can you have the Qin family's supreme card?" Long Xiao sneered and said, "Because I am the VIP you mentioned that Elder Qin and Qin Shuangyu treated so warmly. You looked down on others and offended me, a distinguished guest. How do you think Mr. Qin will deal with you?" Chapter 9. Qin Family Supreme Card. Long Xiao is the VIP that Qin Lao and Qin Shuangyu admire. Everyone at the scene looked incredulous. "Impossible. How could a loser like you, Long Xiao, be a distinguished guest of the Qin family?" Liu Qian rushed over, pointed at Long Xiao's nose and said loudly, "I know. You want to do something big, prove it to me, and attract my attention, right? You caused a big disturbance in Wangyu Villa and caused a huge disaster. I admit that you did it. But do you think I'll be touched? You're going to die pretending to be a VIP. Captain Yi, please kill him immediately." Marcoan stood up again, holding his stomach, and said through gritted teeth with a sullen face, "Impersonating a VIP and offending Mr. Qin is an unforgivable sin. Captain Yi, what are you still standing there for?" The other bosses also shouted in condemnation, requesting Yi Biao to take action immediately and kill Long Xiao. However, Yi Biao's reaction was beyond everyone's expectations. He stared at the supreme card in Long Xiao's hand, gritting his teeth and keeping silent, with a look of fear in his eyes. It seems that Long Xiao is holding a very terrifying weapon. A boss couldn't help but ask cautiously, "I've heard for a long time that the Qin family has a supreme card. The card holder is respected by everyone in the Qin family and can pass through all Qin family companies without any obstacles. But I have never seen this card, nor have I heard of anyone who is lucky enough to get this card. Captain Yi, this guy's picture, can't it be real? The muscles at the corners of Yi Biao's eyes twitched violently. In the end, he could only grit his teeth and spit out a few words from between his teeth. Yes. What he holds in his hand is indeed the Qin family's only supreme card. What? Everyone was surprised. So, Long Xiao really became a VIP guest of the Qin family. How is this possible? Although they couldn't figure out what was going on, some bosses who were quick-witted had already started smiling at Long Xiao. Long Xiao is not important, but he is the VIP of the Qin family, and this identity is too important. As long as I can please the Qin family through Long Xiao, any price I pay will be worth it. If they hadn't still had doubts in their hearts, they really wanted to bow to Long Xiao. The bodyguards who had surrounded Long Xiao and were ready to attack at any time also retreated in shock. They really don't want to get involved in this business anymore after offending Mr. Qin's VIPs. Just as Long Xiao said just now, what Mr. Qin said was not just their job, but their entire career. Now, do you still think that I am of low status and everything is my fault? Long Xiao looked at Yi Biao and sneered again, with a hint of teasing in his expression. Who would have thought that things would change, and today it was his turn to be the boss. It was the first time in his life that he was the center of attention, and although it was a bit absurd, he still enjoyed the feeling. Yi Biao gritted his teeth and shifted his gaze from the black card to Long Xiao's face. His eyes were like murderous knives, and he wished he could cut Long Xiao into pieces. The card is real, but your people. Yi Biao gritted his teeth and said, it must be fake. Long Xiao frowned and asked, what do you mean? Am I holding a supreme card, or a fake VIP? Of course. Yi Biao shouted, you are a gigolo who lives off others and was kicked out of the house because of your incompetence. How can you be a distinguished guest of the Qin family? Tell me where you stole the card from, and I'll give you some leniency. Otherwise, I'll chop you up myself. As Yi Biao spoke, he pulled out a gleaming scimitar from his waist. Long Xiao said helplessly, perhaps you are not qualified to contact Qin Lao or Qin Shuangyue directly, but you can always contact your boss Ling Qian, right? I suggest you ask for instructions first. What if I am real? Yi Biao said angrily, no chance. Since you refuse to admit it, I will chop you up now, and wait for Mr. Qin and the real VIP to come, which will be considered a great achievement. As he spoke, he gripped the scimitar tightly and walked towards Long Xiao. Feeling the cruel murderous aura from him, Long Xiao knew that this guy was really going to chop him to death. He couldn't help but get really angry. He had knocked Ling Qian away with a sudden punch before, and had kicked Markuan away twice just now. Both times were unexpected. But it's different now. Yi Biao is also a warrior. He is coming towards him head-on with all his strength, and he has a knife in his hand. This is the first time that Long Xiao has faced a real fight. It is a matter of life and death. It is impossible to say that he is not nervous at all. Although he was a little nervous, he didn't feel scared at all. On the contrary, he felt the blood flow in his body quicken, as if his animal nature was awakening. After being baptized by the spirit pearl, he possessed the body of a tiger or leopard, and what changed was not only his body, but also his mind and soul. Staring at the oncoming madman, he lowered his body slightly, and a gleam of excitement flashed in his eyes. This time he will show no mercy. He wants to tear this ungrateful guy apart. Yi Biao had no idea that danger was approaching. He was proud of his status as a warrior and thought that Long Xiao was just a weakling who could be easily captured. At the same time, led by Liu Qian and Markuan, their wealthy bosses around them also began to clamor. Captain Yi is so awesome. Chop that bastard up and defend the Qin family's dignity. Wait a moment until Elder Qin arrives, we will all commend Captain Yi for his achievements. Long Xiao, you bastard, Captain Yi will personally take action against you, so prepare to die. You don't know how to appreciate a favor. You deserve to be chopped off. Under this kind of shouting, Yi Biao's blood began to boil. His eyes were red, and he seemed to have transformed into a loyal fighter in the ancient arena. He felt that his mission was to kill, to use the blood of his opponents in exchange for the favor of the financial sponsors in the audience. Die for me. When he reached the optimal attack distance, he raised his knife and revealed a ferocious face. Everyone stopped shouting and opened their mouths, waiting to see Long Xiao's head fall to the ground. Long Xiao concentrated his attention, locked onto Yi Biao's floors, and prepared for a fatal blow. At the critical moment, suddenly dazzling car lights lit up in the distance, and 3 Volkswagen cars came roaring and stopped in front of everyone. The car door opened, and agile bodyguards quickly jumped out and lined up in front. Yi Biao was stunned for a moment, then saw the door of a car in the middle open and a familiar figure got out. He looked surprised and asked hurriedly, "Captain Ling, you're here. I was about to execute a criminal who pretended to be a VIP and just now said he knew you." Yi Biao greeted Ling Qian and said in a flattering tone. Ling Qian looked at Long Xiao, then stared at Yi Biao and gritted his teeth and said, "You said he is a criminal pretending to be a VIP." When Liu Qian saw Ling Qian's aura crushing Yi Biao as soon as he appeared, she said excitedly, "Captain Ling, this guy is called Long Xiao, he is my ex-husband, I kicked him out, he went crazy, knew I was coming to the birthday party tonight, and actually stole the Supreme card and pretended to be a VIP to run over and cause trouble. Deputy Captain Yi was loyal to his duty, it was right to kill him. This guy really deserves to die." Marcoan said, Right. How dare such a person come here to cause trouble? Killing him is the least of his worries." The other bosses also agreed with a smile. Ling Qian narrowed his eyes at Yi Biao and asked coldly, "Have you seen the Supreme card?" Yi Biao smiled proudly and said, "Yes. The card is fine, but this guy is definitely fake. How can a loser like him be a VIP? Captain, I have learned a lot about knife skills recently. It's just right to use this guy's dog head as a target to try it out. How about you give me some pointers? I'll give your sister some pointers." Ling Qian couldn't bear it any longer and slapped Yi Biao in the face. He took a deep breath and strode towards Long Xiao. Chapter 10. It goes without saying how strong Ling Qian's grip is. The key point is this sudden slap, it was too sudden. Yi Biao was stunned both physically and mentally. Not only him, but also Liu Qian, Marcoan and everyone else at the scene widened their eyes in surprise and were at a loss. In the end, it was Yi Biao who broke the silence first. He covered his face, watching Ling Qian walk towards Long Xiao's back, gritting his teeth and shouting, "You are the captain, you want to punish Long personally and steal the credit from us subordinates, I can tolerate it. But why did you hit me? I, Yi Biao, am the deputy captain and a real man. You showed off your power in front of so many people and hit me in the face. Don't I have any dignity? Ling Qian, how can the brothers obey you like this?" His eyes were impulsive and full of unwillingness. After hearing this, Liu Qian and others suddenly realized. It turns out that Ling Qian wanted to pick fruit. Ordinary people might think this is a bit excessive, but in the eyes of these people, it is normal. They claim to be the best, and usually rely on getting something for nothing, sucking the blood of the people below to fatten themselves. In other words, this is the unspoken rule of the workplace. As for Ling Qian slapping Yi Biao, that was even more normal. To establish authority. Otherwise, how can he prove his weight as a captain? Thinking of this, Liu Qian and the others did not sympathize with Yi Biao at all, and even no longer took him seriously. Instead, they looked at Ling Qian and shouted loudly, "Captain Ling personally punishes him, it couldn't be better. Captain Ling is good at commanding his subordinates and controlling the overall situation. He is worthy of being the favorite of Mr. Qin. Captain Ling is mighty. Long Xiao, you useless piece of shit. Captain Ling will personally take action, and you're dead. Captain Ling is the best martial arts expert in Yuncheng. It would be a blessing for your ancestors to die at his hands." It was a feast for the eyes to see Ling Qian take action, and everyone became excited. Especially Liu Qian and Marcoan, they rushed to Long Xiao, pointed at his face, and shouted wantonly, "Mr. Long." Ling Qian came to Long Xiao's side and called out awkwardly. Long Xiao turned slightly and locked his eyes on Ling Qian. He still maintained the same offensive posture as when he faced Yi Biao. Ling Qian's face changed drastically. He was a martial artist and instantly felt a huge sense of danger and oppression from Long Xiao. Although he could tell at a glance that Long Xiao was an amateur, Long Xiao's aura was so natural, as if he was born with it. That is an aggression that transcends all moves and emanates from the bones. A quality that only the most perfect beasts possess. Ling Qian felt like his whole body was locked, his muscles were tense, and he thought of many ways to dodge or attack, but he didn't dare to move at all. He had a hunch that if he moved, he would reveal a flaw, giving his opponent a chance to deliver a fatal blow. For a moment, this martial arts master who had been on the battlefield for a long time turned pale, and even beads of sweat oozed out of his forehead. Seeing Ling Qian's look, Long Xiao revealed an imperceptible look of satisfaction. He completed the experiment and knew that although he had never practiced martial arts, his tiger and leopard bodies were enough to perfectly suppress a master like Ling Qian. He smiled slightly, gathered his strength, stood up straight, and said, "Captain Ling, thank you for helping me out. You've worked hard." The terrifying feeling of being treated as prey disappeared. Ling Qian wiped the sweat from his forehead, finally heaved a sigh of relief, and said with a smile, "Sir, you are too polite. Yi Biao, listen to me. I stopped you, but I saved you. Otherwise, if you had taken action, you would have been either dead or injured. Mr. Long is the VIP of the Qin family. Come over here and kneel down to apologize." "What did you say?" Yi Biao widened his eyes in horror. Ling Qian's words were even more shocking than the slap he had just received. Not only Yi Biao, but everyone else was stunned. Especially Liu Qian and Mark Huan, who were standing closest, looked like they were kissed by a ghost and stood in the wind in dishevel. "He is really the VIP, how is this possible?" Liu Qian's face was full of disbelief. Ling Qian snorted heavily and said, "I saw with my own eyes that Mr. Qin handed the supreme card to Mr. Long. How could he be wrong? Mr. Long is a distinguished guest invited by Mr. Qin. You blind people have offended him. Why don't you come over and apologize and seek forgiveness? Otherwise, no one will be able to enter the banquet hall." Ling Qian personally cleared Long Xiao's name, and every word he said was thunderous and decisive, leaving no doubt about it. The bosses looked at each other, and some of the smarter ones hurriedly walked towards Long Xiao with smiles on their faces. He bowed deeply, smiled flatteringly and said, "Mr. Long, it was all a misunderstanding before. You are a magnanimous person, please don't bother with us." "That's right, it's just a misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. I told you, Mr. Long is so imposing and has the potential to be a dragon, how could he be a waste? Liu Qian, you are so blind. Liu Qian, you regret missing out on a son-in-law like Mr. Long, don't you?" One person spoke, and a group of people responded. These wealthy tycoons who had been so arrogant just now and trampled Long Xiao under their feet were now nodding and bowing like a group of lapdogs. Liu Qian and Mark Huan's faces turned pale. They racked their brains but couldn't figure out what had happened. Long Xiao was obviously a waste, so why did he suddenly soar to the sky and become a VIP of the Qin family? Seeing Ling Qian being respectful to Long Xiao, Liu Qian suddenly remembered what Long Xiao said to her when he first came, "Forcing me to divorce is the biggest mistake you have made in your life, and you will definitely regret it." Liu Qian's face turned pale, and she couldn't help but think, if she hadn't forced Long Xiao to divorce, would she be the VIP lady in the spotlight now? Mark Huan's face turned pale. He also remembered what Long Xiao had said to him, "Drink urine." "I don't really want to drink urine in public, do I?" He and Liu Qian looked at each other, anxiously thinking about how to save face. Yi Biao, who was standing far away, couldn't help swallowing. He knew that he had made a big mistake today. He hated himself for being so smart. Old Qin had clearly said that anyone holding a supreme card was a VIP of the Qin family. He could just recognize the card instead of the person, so why was he being so smart and doubting Long Xiao's identity? However, it was too embarrassing to kowtow to Long Xiao and confess his guilt. "Stupid thing, why don't you come over here and kowtow to apologize? Are you waiting for me to report to Master Qin and end your life?" Ling Qian glared and scolded. Yi Biao was startled and was about to come over to kneel down to Long Xiao when suddenly, a few shrill whistles were heard from a distance on the quiet hillside. Everyone was shocked and turned their heads to look. They saw two dazzling lights, illuminating half of the mountain like daylight. With the roar of the engine, a car was driving towards them quickly. Who is this person? Doesn't he know where this place is? How dare he make such a noise? A boss couldn't help but say. Ling Qian seemed to have guessed the identity of the visitor. He frowned slightly and whispered to Long Xiao, "Mr. Qin and Miss will be here soon. Mr. Long, let's go in and rest first." Long Xiao was stunned for a moment, and asked in confusion, "Who is coming? Even you are afraid?" "No." Ling Qian wanted to explain, but he smiled bitterly and didn't know what to say. As the roar of the engine bombarded the eardrums, a scarlet limited edition sports car stopped in front of everyone. Everyone at the scene looked on curiously, wanting to know who had such a grand show and courage. "You are all standing at the door to greet me." As the scissor doors rose, a wild voice was heard, and everyone saw a young man with a proud face sitting in the driver's seat of the sports car. "Master Feng." Everyone felt that he looked familiar, but before they dared to confirm, Yi Biao cheered and walked over with a look of surprise on his face. Chapter 11. Master Phone. It's really Master Phone who's back. Come, meet Master Phone. After recognizing the man's identity, all the bosses surrounding Long Xiao showed expressions of surprise, and swarmed over like flies smelling something. Markuan, who was feeling ashamed and unable to move forward or backward, cheered and rushed forward as if he had seen his own father. Liu Qian reacted and hurried to follow. Long Xiao, who was the center of attention a second ago, was immediately surrounded by a crowd of people, with only Ling Qian, who looked embarrassed, left. Ling Qian saw Long Xiao staring at the people in the distance with hatred in his eyes, and explained in a low voice, "Mr. Long, don't be angry, this Feng Xiao has a special identity, he is Qin Huangzu's grandson, Qin Shuangyue's cousin, Qin Shuanfen." Long Xiao said lightly. Ling Qian was stunned for a moment, and asked in surprise, "Mr. Long also knows?" Long Xiao sneered, although he grew up abroad, as the only grandson of old Qin, how could he be unknown? In fact, he has long been the target of the major families in Yuncheng, but out of protection and training for him, old Qin has always let him stay abroad. Ling Qian whispered, "Old Qin did train him as his successor. It's a pity." He shook his head and didn't want to say any more. Long Xiao didn't want to stop there, and sneered, "It's a pity that Qin Shuangfen is not worth cultivating." The first time he returned to China 3 years ago, he killed a female college student in a bar. At this point, Long Xiao looked directly at Ling Qian and said sarcastically, "People always chase after wealth and power." After experiencing extreme despair and pain, the female student who had the misfortune of meeting Qin Shuangfeng's life froze, her soul flew away, and she turned into smoke. However, the perpetrator is still thriving and enjoying prosperity, just because he is the grandson of Qin Huangzu, right? Feeling Long Xiao's accountability and pressure, Ling Qian was ashamed. He whispered awkwardly, "Mr. Long, you misunderstood Mr. Qin." After learning about that incident, Boss Qin was furious. He first tied Qin Shuangfeng up in the ancestral hall and hung him for 3 days and 3 nights, forcing him to confess his sins to the ancestors. Then he was going to personally take him to the girl's grave to pay for his life. However, the girl's parents and brother took the initiative to find Mr. Qin and said that the girl was at fault first. She shouldn't have gone to the bar, let alone worn revealing clothes, and seduced Mr. Phone. They are willing to accept mediation and will not pursue the matter further. Since the parties involved have said so, although Mr. Qin is angry, he has no choice but to let it go. I admit that Mr. Qin may have some partiality in mind, after all, Qin Shuangfen is his only grandson. But I promise that as long as the other party's parents do not reconcile, Mr. Qin will kill this little bastard himself for the sake of justice. Long Xiao's expression softened a little, and he admitted that it was rare to be able to do what Qin Huangzu did. It was Qin Shuangfeng's father, the second master of your Qin family, who was behind this, right? In fact, if old Qin really wanted to kill him, he could have done it right then and there. Hanging the little bastard in the ancestral hall was both a punishment and a way to give him room to maneuver. Of course, he wouldn't personally deal with this kind of thing. As Qin Shuangfeng's father, second master Qin would naturally take care of it. To put it bluntly, it was all about power. Ling Qian nodded and said, "Your analysis is correct. That is why the old man felt guilty and became seriously ill. However, as a punishment for the second master and young master Feng, the old man ordered them to leave Yuncheng and go to the provincial capital to manage the branch business. They were not allowed to come back without permission. The incident was also deliberately downplayed, so these well-mannered bosses did not recognize young master Feng for a while. But this guy Yi Biao." Ling Qian's face turned sinister, and he gritted his teeth and said, "I've heard that he has a close relationship with Qin Shuangfeng in private. Many times he went on business trips to the provincial capital, but in fact he was Qin Shuangfeng's lackey. I just turned a blind eye." Long Xiao had already thought of these things through Yi Biao's reaction just now. He looked through the crowd and saw Yi Biao standing next to Qin Shuangfen with his head bowed and saying something excitedly. He couldn't help but sneered, "He must be saying bad things about you, Captain Ling, you are in trouble." At this time, Qin Shuangfen also looked over. His gaze first paused on Long Xiao's face, revealing a sneer, as if he was very disdainful, and then glanced at Ling Qian again. "Grandpa's birthday party. As the only boy in the Qin family, of course I have to come back." Qin Shuangfeng said loudly, picked up a box from the passenger seat, and then got out of the car. The bosses who were watching immediately bowed and stepped back to make room. Qin Shuangfeng threw the box in his hand to Yi Biao, took out a small cigar and put it in his mouth. Yi Biao immediately lit a lighter and came over. Qin Shuangfeng didn't look at Yi Biao, but looked at Ling Qian in the distance and smiled. "Old Ling, long time no see. You saw me coming, but you didn't even come over to say hello. What? Don't you recognize me?" Ling Qian could only walk over awkwardly and said with a smile, "Hello, Mr. Phone." Qin Shuangfeng nodded and said, "Do you have a lighter? Light a cigarette for me." Ling Qian shook his head and said, "I don't smoke, and I don't have a lighter." Qin Shuangfeng looked at Yi Biao and scolded him, "As the deputy captain, you are so ignorant. Your captain didn't bring a lighter, why don't you give him one?" Yi Biao reacted and handed the lighter in his hand to Ling Qian with a sneer. Ling Qian knew that Qin Shuangfeng was deliberately making things difficult for him, so he gritted his teeth, took the lighter, and walked over to him. Qin Shuangfeng said angrily, "You raised it so high, do you want to burn my eyebrows?" Ling Qian had no choice but to bend down. Qin Shuangfeng turned around and greeted the boss next to him, letting Ling Qian remain bent over. He waited for about half a minute before he leaned forward to light the cigarette. Seeing the security captain Ling Qian, who was so majestic and intimidating the whole audience just now bending over and lighting a cigarette for Qin Shuangfeng like an old servant, the eyes of the onlookers all lit up. They appeared calm on the surface, but were extremely excited in their hearts. This is the real young master. Although old Qin loves Qin Shuangyue the most, as Qin Shuangfeng just said, he is the only boy in the Qin family. The future Qin family must belong to Qin Shuangfeng. They felt that they had seen a real dragon today and knew where to stand. Qin Shuangfeng took a puff of his cigarette and blew the thick smoke onto Ling Qian's face. Ling Qian frowned and stepped back awkwardly. Qin Shuangfeng suddenly stretched out his hand and slapped him in the face. Ling Qian turned against Qin Shuangfeng instantly and glared at him angrily, like a ferocious beast with its teeth bared. Qin Shuangfeng was not intimidated. He patted Ling Qian on the face with his hand and said with a nonchalant smile, "Old man, you dare to glare at me. Do you know what happens when a guard dog bites its master?" The slap wasn't heavy, but it was like teasing a child and was very insulting. Although he was laughing, the words he said were harsh and attacked his dignity. Ling Qian could no longer bear it, took a step back, and said in a deep voice, "I am here to maintain order on the orders of the old man and the eldest lady. Please respect it, young Master Phone. Respect." Qin Shuangfeng sneered and looked at Long Xiao in the distance with a glare as sharp as a knife. "I have been here for so long, and there are people standing here like wooden stakes, but they don't come to greet me. I feel very disrespected. Ling Qian, can you teach him how to respect me?" Chapter 12. Swish. After hearing Qin Shuangfeng's words, everyone around once again focused their eyes on Long Xiao's face. There was excitement and gloating in his eyes. This guy Long Xiao relied on the supreme card in his hand to show off, but just now under the pressure of Ling Qian, they had to bow their heads and smile. Now that the eldest son of the Qin family is here, does the guy named Long still dare to show off? Is his supreme card, which serves as a talisman, still useful? Liu Qian, Markuan and Yi Biao, who had been forced into a corner before, were even more proud. They had found a big supporter, and now it was time to make Long Xiao uncomfortable. "Long Xiao, didn't you hear what Master Phone said? Come over here and pay your respects to Master Phone," Liu Qian said with a sneer. Markuan immediately added insult to injury, "You are standing there doing nothing. Do you think your so-called VIP status is more important than Master Phone?" Yi Biao smiled slightly, adding fuel to the fire, "No matter how important the VIP is, he is still an outsider. And Master Phone is their host. Long Xiao, you are not trying to turn the tables, are you?" This statement received responses from the other bosses. Yi Biao was right. No matter how important the VIP was, he was still an outsider. As the only young master of the Qin family, Qin Shuangfeng was almost the future head of the Qin family, the master. It is clear at a glance which side is more important. So they immediately started to agree. "Mr. Long, why don't you meet Master Phone? No matter how you got the supreme card, you are still a guest after all. Do you dare to bully the host? Why, you've never seen a big scene before, are you scared silly by Master Phone?" All kinds of mocking and ridiculing voices are unbearable to hear. Seeing that Long Xiao remained silent and stared at Qin Shuangfeng, his eyes gradually turned red, as if he remembered some irreconcilable hatred Ling Qian's heart tightened. Could it be that Long Xiao has a grudge against Qin Xuanfeng? He suddenly remembered what Long Xiao had just said. Why did he know so much about Qin Xuanfeng's affairs? This shouldn't be the case. Worried that Long Xiao might offend Qin Xuanfeng in his impulse, Ling Qian didn't bother to think too much and hurriedly explained with a smile, Mr. Feng, let me introduce him to you. This Mr. Long Xiaolong is the distinguished guest invited by the old man. Ling Qian originally thought that after he revealed Long Xiao's identity, Qin Xuanfeng would restrain his attitude, but who knew that before he could finish his words? Snap! I got slapped hard on the face. What are you doing? Ling Qian stared at Qin Xuanfeng in shock and anger and asked. You are so shameless. Qin Xuanfeng shook his hand that was hurt by the shock, looked at Ling Qian and sneered, this slap is to remind you to be careful with your words. Can any cat or dog be the VIP of our Qin family? I'll give you a chance to reorganize your words, then. Seeing Ling Qian gritting his teeth and clenching his fists, Yi Biao gloated and said, what's wrong with hitting you? You are a servant of the Qin family, and Master Feng is the master. If I hit you, you can only stand at attention. It would be a sin to dare to hide. Master Feng is asking you a question. If you don't want to get slapped again, think carefully about what to say. Ling Qian said unhappily. The supreme card in his hand was given to him by the old man himself. If he is not a VIP, then what is he? Qin Xuanfeng smiled and said, did I really make a mistake? Then tell me, why did my grandfather give him the supreme card? Ling Qian raised his head and said, because Mr. Long is a miracle doctor who can cure the old man's illness. Everyone was shocked when these words came out. They all knew that Qin Wangzu was in poor health and would not live long, and this might be his last day, so they all tried their best to attend. Because Qin Wangzu will definitely have plans for the Qin family's business empire in Yuncheng, they want to get a piece of the pie as soon as possible. Who knew that Long Xiao was actually a miracle doctor and could cure Qin Wangzu? You're talking nonsense. Qin Xuanfeng's face was gloomy. He gritted his teeth and slapped Ling Qian in the face again. This time, Ling Qian was prepared, and it was easy for him to dodge. But he didn't move, and was slapped again. He stared at Qin Xuanfeng with red eyes, gritting his teeth and said, what did I do wrong this time? Qin Xuanfeng pointed at Ling Qian's nose and cursed, idiot, how dare you talk back? My grandfather's illness has been treated by many famous doctors but none of them can cure it. This guy is young and unknown. He is clearly a liar who deliberately deceives the elderly. The old man is desperate and has tried all kinds of treatments. He is too old to tell the difference. Can't you tell the difference too? Why did you let Grandpa be fooled and not stop him? Not only did you not stop him, but you also helped him. Tell me, should I slap you? Ling Qian was confused. He never thought that Qin Xuanfeng would think this way. Seeing Qin Xuanfeng's indignation and self-righteousness, Ling Qian suddenly didn't know how to defend himself. He even felt that Qin Xuanfeng was right. Not to mention Qin Xuanfeng and everyone else present, the first time he heard Long Xiao say that he could treat illnesses, he almost arrested Long Xiao as a madman. You're speechless, aren't you? Get out of here, you bastard. I'll teach you a lesson later. Qin Xuanfeng kicked Ling Qian aside fiercely, then pointed at Long Xiao and said, you, the loser pretending to be a genius doctor, come here. Let me see how many noses you have. You dare to pretend to be a genius doctor and defraud our Qin family. If you are a miracle doctor, why don't you cure your congenital disability and not be kicked out by Miss Liu? Everyone burst into laughter and applauded. At this point, the truth is out. It turns out that Long Xiao lied to Mr. Qin that he could cure diseases, so Mr. Qin gave him the supreme card. From Mr. Qin's perspective, he is a patient and an old man. It is understandable that he was excited and deceived when he heard that someone could cure his illness. But from Long Xiao's perspective, he deceived the patient, and more importantly, the patient was old Qin, so he deserved to be cut into pieces and deserved to die. You useless bastard, you've really become very capable. You even dared to pretend to be a miracle doctor. Fortunately, I cut my losses in time and kicked you out, otherwise even I would have been implicated. Luckily Master Feng saw through it. Master Feng, you have to make the decision for me and all of us. Liu Qian spoke in a delicate voice and subconsciously moved closer to Qin Xuanfeng. Seeing Long Xiao standing still, Marquan shouted, are you scared? Master Feng asked you to come over, didn't you hear me? Long Xiao hesitated for a moment, then walked over. Ling Qian hurriedly said, Mr. Long. Long Xiao raised his hand and said, Captain Ling, I will handle my own affairs. He came to Qin Shuangfeng with a smile, his eyebrows slightly raised. I'm here, then what? You're really obedient. Qin Shuangfeng laughed triumphantly, spread his legs, pointed at his crotch, and said, I can spare you from killing you, but you have to be my dog. Come on, kneel down and crawl under you. Many people present were very familiar with the game where the rich second generation treated the lower class like dogs. But compared with Qin Shuangfeng, they are nothing. Get in there, useless piece of shit. Our rich people's crotches are made for lowly people like you to get in there. It's your honor to be able to get into Feng Xiao's crotch. Dr. Long, who is so incompetent that he can't even keep his own wife, is really hilarious. People were shouting exaggeratedly and laughing wildly. Long Xiao looked at Qin Shuangfeng, a cold look in his eyes, and suddenly raised his hand. Sir. Ling Qian realized something and wanted to dissuade him, but it was too late. A shadow flashed by. Long Xiao slapped Qin Shuangfeng in the face, knocking him to the ground. Chapter 13. Although Long Xiao only used 30% of his strength, the bodies of tigers and leopards are no small matter. This sudden slap not only knocked Qin Shuangfeng to the ground, but also short-circuited his brain. He sat on the ground, like a child who had suddenly fallen out of favor, dazed for a few seconds, until the blood from his nose flowed into his mouth, and then he reacted. You hit me. How dare you hit me, you bastard? He rushed over shouting, but he was dizzy and his lower body was unstable. With a thud, he fell headfirst in front of Long Xiao, like a dog being bitten. Young master. Are you okay? Yi Biao reacted and rushed over to help Qin Shuangfeng up. Qin Shuangfeng's face was covered in blood, and he looked at Long Xiao and suddenly burst into laughter. Interesting. Really fucking interesting. I never thought that someone would dare to touch me in Yincheng. And he's just a weak-ass gigolo who was kicked out. Very good. Now I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to cut you into pieces, one cut at a time. Ling Qian, what are you still standing there for? Hurry up and tie up this bastard. When the rest of the people reacted, they all exploded like a lit powder keg. It can be said that Long Xiao's slap refreshed their cognition and overturned their worldview. A pretty boy dares to attack a prominent figure from the upper class. This is a rebellion. Kill him. Hang him up and torture him to death. The crowd was in an uproar and surrounded Long Xiao, accusing and cursing him excitedly. Yi Biao looked at Ling Qian and sneered, Captain, didn't you hear what the young master said? Or do you not want to work in the Qin family anymore? Ling Qian didn't expect Long Xiao to be so tough. Slapping the eldest son of the Qin family in public is a challenge to the rules of the entire Yuncheng. But he couldn't arrest Long Xiao according to Qin Shuangfeng's order. Not only because Long Xiao was a distinguished guest hired by Qin Wangzu, but also because he firmly believed that Long Xiao could really cure Qin Wangzu's illness. Moreover, 20% of the hidden diseases he had acquired from practicing martial arts had not yet been eradicated. Thinking of this, he hurried over, stopped in front of Long Xiao, and said to Qin Shuangfeng, Mr. Feng, no matter what, Mr. Long is a distinguished guest invited by Mr. Qin. Even for Mr. Qin's sake, you can't touch him. What did you say? Qin Shuangfeng slapped Ling Qian in the face, staring and gritting his teeth. You bastard, you still want to betray me. I'll count to 3. If you don't hang this bastard up for me, I'll skin you alive. Yi Biao. Yi Biao hurriedly said, I'm here. Qin Shuangfeng said, listen, if this guy dares not to follow my orders, you will take him down immediately. From now on, you will take his place. Yi Biao was delighted and said excitedly, yes, sir. Looking at Ling Qian, Captain, I advise you to think carefully, capture the man surnamed Long, kneel down and apologize to Master Feng. Brother, I really don't want to replace you. Ling Qian gritted his teeth and said nothing. 1. 2. Qin Shuangfeng began to count. Yi Biao winked at several of his men, and he also moved closer to Ling Qian. He said that he didn't want to replace Ling Qian, but in his heart he couldn't wait. As soon as Qin Shuangfeng shouted 3, he and his men would immediately take action and capture Ling Qian first. After dealing with Ling Qian, he will be the Qin family's security captain from now on. Seeing Ling Qian confronting him with a dark face, Qin Shuangfeng was furious and shouted loudly, 3. Chapter 14. Get started. Yi Biao shouted and was about to take action. Ling Qian shouted, "Who dares to move? The old man is here." Everyone was startled and looked hurriedly into the distance. 3 cars drove up quietly. The car in the middle really seems to be Mr. Qin's phaeton. The sharp-eyed boss whispered. The godfather of Yuncheng, the protagonist of tonight, is finally about to show up. Compared to Qin Xuanfeng, the punished young master, old Qin is the real big tree. Everyone turned around and looked at the oncoming car as if they were worshipping, their eyes filled with eagerness. I didn't even have the mood to care about how to punish Long Xiao. After all, whether Long Xiao lives or dies is just a matter of a word from old Qin. Master Feng, what should we do? Yi Biao asked in a low voice. He hated Long Xiao so much, but he still wanted to kill him before Qin Wangzu arrived. He was afraid that if even old Qin protected Long Xiao, then not only would he have no hope of revenge, he might even be held accountable. But if he had to take action by force, with the evil god Ling Qian blocking his way, he knew he couldn't make it. Only Qin Xuanfeng can deal with Ling Qian personally. Qin Xuanfeng's eyes flashed with a sinister look, and he pointed at Ling Qian's nose, then said to Long Xiao behind him, "You bastard surnamed Long, wait until I expose your tricks in front of my grandfather, and you will die without a burial place." Liu Qian hurriedly flattered him, "Don't worry, Master Feng. I can prove to the old man that he is just an ignorant charlatan who has no medical skills at all." Marcoan also laughed hurriedly and said, "Besides, we have already invited the real miracle doctor. If a fake Li Gui meets the real Li Kuei, this guy will definitely have nowhere to hide." Qin Xuanfeng showed a bit of relief and sneered, "This is the best." Soon, under the protection of 2 cars in front and behind, Qin Wangzu's phaeton was parked in an open space not far away. The bosses stood in a row excitedly, like primary school students welcoming the leader's inspection, and they all tried to put on a humble and sensible expression on their faces. The car door opened and everyone's eyes lit up. It's Qin Xuanyue. The eldest daughter of the Qin family, the undisputed #1 socialite in Yuncheng, usually appears aloof. Her clothing style is mainly cold colors, and few people have ever seen her wearing makeup. But today, perhaps it was because of Qin Wangzu's birthday party, she was wearing a long red dress with her hair tied up high. Her snow-white swan neck exuded a noble temperament, and the emerald necklace on her neck perfectly reflected her taste and background. Before she arrived, many people at the scene thought Liu Qian was very beautiful. Liu Qian also felt like a princess and would be the focus of the night. But when Qin Xuanyue appeared, she just stood far away beside the car and glanced over here casually, and everyone seemed to be frozen. Time and space are always changing, but time never defeats beauty. Everyone felt as if the world around them had stopped, frozen by Qin Xuanyue's beauty. I forgot to say all the flattering words that I had prepared long ago. So many people were standing there stupidly, everything was so quiet, and the atmosphere seemed a bit weird. Long Xiao didn't expect Qin Xuanyue to be willing to change her style. Although he had awakened the chaos spirit pearl, he was still a mortal. He had the love of beauty that all normal men have. He admitted that his heart was moved at this moment. Seeing Qin Xuanyue looking at him, Long Xiao smiled. Qin Xuanyue's pretty face turned slightly red, and she wanted to avoid the gaze, but she soon realized that something was wrong. She saw her second-generation rich cousin with blood all over his face, and Long Xiao was blocked by Ling Qian behind him. There were many Qin family bodyguards around him, ready for battle. It looked like he was being held hostage. Is he in danger? Qin Xuanyue was anxious, and hurriedly said in a tender voice, "Mr. Long, Grandpa wants you to come over and say a few words." Chapter 15. The voice was cold and contained a hint of girlish shyness. Everyone suddenly came to their senses and were shocked by what Qin Xuanyue said. Qin Xuanyue was so gentle that she called Long Xiao over. More importantly, Qin Wangzu actually wanted to have a private conversation with Long Xiao in front of everyone. At this time, Qin Wangzu also got out of the car. "Grandfather!" Qin Xuanfeng let out a low cry and wanted to rush over. "I didn't ask you to come over." Qin Wangzu scolded without even looking at Qin Xuanfeng. Instead, he looked at Long Xiao, his old eyes full of tenderness and appreciation. Qin Xuanfeng's feet seemed to be locked, and he stood there, not daring to move. The reason why he didn't go to meet them just now, but stood there stupidly like everyone else, was because he and his father were driven to the provincial capital and were not allowed to come back without permission. This time he sneaked back according to his father's instructions. His father, Qin Lin, did not dare to come back, fearing the punishment from the old man, but he thought that if he sent his son back, the old man would not do anything to his grandson as they were closer generations apart. What's more, it's a happy day to celebrate a birthday. But Qin Shuangfeng was afraid of Qin Huangzu deep down. Everything was fine before they met, but now that they had met, he still didn't dare to move. Young Master Qin, open your eyes and take a good look at who I am. A cold and arrogant voice sounded in my ears. Qin Shuangfeng turned his head and saw Long Xiao's sneering and mocking face. You bastard! Qin Shuangfeng gritted his teeth and said, I will expose your mask soon. Just wait for death. Long Xiao was too lazy to pay any more attention to it. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he floated in front of Qin Shuangyue and Qin Huangzu. Qin Shuangyue whispered, are you okay? Long Xiao smiled slightly, if you don't come, I will really be tortured to death by your Feng Xiao. Qin Huangzu said angrily, I will deal with this little bastard later. Mr. Long, please move over here. I just want to explain why Shuangyue and I are late. Shuangyue, you go ahead and say it. Qin Shuangyue whispered, Grandpa was in poor health before, and he knew he didn't have much time left. He was unable to handle many business matters, and I had no intention of taking care of it. Thanks to your help, Grandpa saw hope. So Grandpa and I need to urgently redeploy and arrange business matters. That's why I came late and caused you some trouble. Don't be angry, I'll apologize to you on behalf of Grandpa. As he said this, he lowered his head. Although it was not a long apology, but being able to make this proud girl lower her proud head and explaining in such a gentle and soft voice, Long Xiao was already very grateful. This is enough to reflect Qin Huangzu's sincerity. Otherwise there would be no need to explain it so clearly. Long Xiao nodded and said, the Qin family has a business empire in Yuncheng, involving tens of billions of assets, so it is reasonable to make adjustments. Old Qin, I am not that stingy and I won't care. That's good. Let's go in and talk. Qin Huangzu smiled heartily, took Long Xiao's hand and led the way personally. No one else could hear their conversation, but everyone saw Qin Shuangyue lower her head towards Long Xiao. Now Qin Huangzu personally pulled Long Xiao's hand, which directly shocked them. Grandpa, listen to me. Seeing that his grandfather ignored him and pulled Long Xiao's hand to walk past him, Qin Shuangfeng couldn't bear it anymore. He stood in front of him and said through gritted teeth, this guy is pretending to be a miracle doctor and is poisoning your body. Don't be fooled. Qin Huangzu stopped and said calmly, I'm in a good mood today. I don't want to investigate what happened just now. Are you sure you want me to investigate? Chapter 16. Qin Shuangyue hurriedly whispered, Brother Feng, let's talk later. Let's celebrate Grandpa's birthday first. She had good intentions. Although she didn't like her brother, she was still his elder sister. Besides, she didn't want to anger her grandfather. Who knew that Qin Shuangfeng sneered and said, you didn't let me say it because you teamed up with the guy surnamed Long to pretend to be a genius doctor and deceived Grandpa, right? Qin Shuangyue's face froze. What do you mean by impersonation? What nonsense are you talking about? Qin Shuangfeng sneered, am I talking nonsense? You flatter Grandpa every day and try every way to please him. Isn't it just to inherit the family property? You know Grandpa is in poor health, but you still can't wait and find someone to pretend to be a miracle doctor. Do you want to send Grandpa to the road as soon as possible? Qin Shuangyue's face sank. She couldn't have imagined that her cousin had such a deep misunderstanding of her. And he actually said such words in front of so many people. She said in a deep voice, no matter what you think, I have a clear conscience. Qin Shuangfeng said loudly, since you have a clear conscience, let me investigate the matter thoroughly. Grandpa, I... Kneel down. What did you say? Qin Huangzu said sullenly, you beast. I asked you to kneel down and apologize. Qin Shuangfeng gritted his teeth and knelt down in front of Qin Huangzu. Qin Huangzu said coldly, not for me, but for Mr. Long. Qin Shuangfeng's eyes widened in astonishment, and he was filled with anger. He said, Grandpa, the blood on my face was all caused by this bastard. Now you don't stand up for me, and you want me to kneel down and apologize to him. Qin Huangzu snorted coldly, you can refuse. Then get out of here immediately and never set foot in Yuncheng again. Otherwise, I'll break your legs. Qin Shuangfeng's face turned pale, but since he had come here, he couldn't return empty-handed. So, he gritted his teeth and knelt down towards Long Xiao. Gritting his teeth, he said, I shouldn't have offended you when I knew that you were holding the supreme card given by Grandpa and were a VIP guest of the Qin family. Mr. Qin, please forgive me. Liu Qian, Marquan and other bosses who were watching did not even dare to breathe. They did not expect Qin Huangzu to support Long Xiao so much that he even asked Qin Shuangfeng to kneel down and apologize to Long Xiao in person. I didn't expect Qin Shuangfeng would actually do it. Being so flexible and adaptable, I have to say that this master phone is definitely a character. Long Xiao looked at Qin Shuangfeng's bloody face and sneered, there is no grudge between us, you don't have to apologize to me. I didn't slap you because you offended me. Young Master Feng, I'll see how you perform in the future. If you perform well, I'll let you off the hook. If you don't perform well, this slap is just the beginning. Qin Shuangfeng gritted his teeth and said, what do you mean? Long Xiao looked at his unruly face and thought of the girl who was tortured to death by him. His anger rose again. He slapped him again and said through gritted teeth, what I mean is, if I don't like you, I will slap you. No matter how cunning Qin Shuangfeng is, he would go crazy. He jumped up with a weird cry and shouted, Grandpa, I've finished my humble words. Now it's my turn to speak. I'm reporting this guy for pretending to be a miracle doctor. He doesn't know any medical skills at all. If you don't believe me, ask Liu Qian. Liu Qian is his wife. They have lived together for 3 years and she knows him very well. Liu Qian, come over here and tell me. Liu Qian came over trembling and said excitedly, Mr. Qin, it is indeed true. As a wife who has lived with Long Xiao for 3 years, I can attest that he really doesn't understand medicine. Qin Shuangyu frowned and said, Miss Liu, please explain clearly. You should be Long Xiao's ex-wife now, not his wife. Besides, do you really understand Long Xiao? Liu Qian was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, of course. He is a good person, except for his sweet words to deceive people. I was deceived by him accidentally at the beginning, and it was not until today that I saw his true face. Miss Qin, you have to be careful and don't be deceived by his pretty face. Seeing that the time was almost right, Marquan came over and said with a flattering smile, Miss Qin, Mr. Qin. Liu Qian is now my fiancé. We have invited Dr. Xue, who has retired overseas, to come and see you. Why don't we ask Dr. Xue to come and see if Long Xiao really knows medical skills? We'll know once we test him. Chapter 17. Miraculous Dr. Xue. Qin Shuangyu asked curiously, is it the legendary Dr. Xue Dao who specializes in curing difficult and complicated diseases and is known as the nemesis of the devil? I have visited him many times, but to no avail. How did you invite him? Liu Qian smiled and said, Miss Qin is right, it is him. Since he went into seclusion overseas, he has cut off contact with the outside world and even changed his name to English. Not to mention Miss Qin, even the boss may not be able to find him. I was able to invite him because my mother had some relationship with him in her early years and they have always kept in touch. He came out of retirement for my mother's sake. Isn't Liu Qian's mother Yang Chunhua? How could she know such a great man? Long Xiao frowned. He vaguely remembered that he had heard Yang Chunhua mention that an old classmate of hers had killed someone because of practicing medicine without a license. He could not stay in China and had to go abroad to hide his identity. Qin Shuangfeng said excitedly, as long as Dr. Xue can cure my grandfather's illness, you two will have done a great deed. Where is he? Call him over quickly. Marquan smiled flatteringly and said, just wait in the car at the foot of the mountain. Because we dare not bring him here without the consent of Mr. Qin. After all, they were here to celebrate the birthday, and it would be offensive to bring a doctor to treat the master without the master's permission. So they left Dr. Xue at the foot of the mountain. Qin Shuangfeng said, what are you waiting for? Tell him to come up immediately and treat my grandfather. Liu Qian was so eager to make a great contribution that she took out her cell phone and said excitedly, wait a moment, Mr. Qin. I'll call him up right away. Inviting Dr. Xue to treat Mr. Qin was a unique and precious birthday gift. Although all the bosses present had prepared gifts carefully, they could not compare to giving health. It seemed that Liu Qian and Marquan would take the first place today. The Ma family is an old and wealthy family that has always cooperated with the Qin family. The Liu family is a new and wealthy family that is gaining momentum. Marquan and Liu Qian are together, and the two families are bound to become a dazzling presence in the Yuncheng business community. In comparison, Long Xiao, Liu Qian's incompetent ex-husband, is really redundant. All the bosses were ready to congratulate Liu Qian and Marquan, and then trample Long Xiao hard. Who would have thought that just when Liu Qian was about to make the call, Qin Huangzu suddenly said coldly, "I have also heard of the name of divine Dr. Shui. After my understanding, I can only say that his reputation is greater than his reality. What's more, I already have Mr. Long. Even if divine Dr. Shui is as miraculous as the legend says, I don't need him anymore. Mr. Long is enough to cure my illness." Liu Qian's hands froze. The smile on her face also disappeared. She didn't dare to resist Qin Huangzu, and could only look at Qin Shuangfeng awkwardly. Qin Shuangfeng knew his grandfather's temper, so he didn't dare to refute. After hesitating for a moment, he looked at Long Xiao. "Mr. Long, tell me, do you dare to let Dr. Shui come up?" This guy reacted quickly and had a vicious mind. If Long Xiao opposed Dr. Shui coming up, it would mean that he was guilty. If Long Xiao asked Dr. Shui to come up, then Qin Huangzu would have no choice but to stop him. Everyone looked at Long Xiao with a look of gloating. Qin Shuangyue whispered, "Don't embarrass Mr. Long. Grandpa and I both approve of his medical skills." Qin Shuangfeng immediately pointed the finger at Qin Shuangyue. "So, you were the one who recommended Long Xiao to Grandpa. You didn't dare to let divine Dr. Shui come to verify it in person. Are you afraid that your conspiracy will be exposed?" Qin Shuangyue was furious. Long Xiao smiled and said, "Isn't it just a face-to-face verification? I also want to see whether this divine Dr. Shui is a monster or a real rejuvenation doctor. Old Qin, ask him to come up." Qin Huangzu said calmly, "Since Mr. Qin said so, let's ask him to come up. Mr. Qin, it's windy outside, let's go in and talk." As he spoke, he held Long Xiao in one hand and Qin Shuangyue in the other, and walked straight in under the gaze of everyone. Qin Shuangfeng saw that his grandfather had always ignored him and praised an outsider so much. He was furious and gritted his teeth and said, "What are you still standing there for? Call Dr. Shui." He secretly swore that he would expose Long Xiao today and defeat Qin Shuangyue. But he wanted to inherit the family business, and he had to win the favor of Qin Huangzu. So he suppressed his anger, looked at Qin Huangzu's back and shouted with a smile, "Grandpa, my father and I have prepared a very precious birthday gift for you." As he spoke, he chased after him. Chapter 18. The other bosses also perked up and followed in, holding their carefully prepared gifts. Finally arrived at the birthday banquet hall. The splendor, luxury and elegance were something Long Xiao had never seen before in his life. In the past, an ordinary person like him would probably never have the chance to set foot here in his entire life. Sitting at the main table in the middle, Qin Huangzu bowed and invited Long Xiao to sit in the main seat in the middle. Originally, Long Xiao didn't want to be so high profile, but he saw the mocking and jealous eyes of the bosses around him. "The more you look down on me, the more I will sit down for you to see." So he happily took a seat. Qin Huangzu and Qin Shuangyue accompanied him on the left and right, while Ling Qian stood behind them with a fierce look in his eyes. This kind of grandeur could be said to be unprecedented in Yuncheng. While Dr. Shui hadn't arrived yet, the bosses began to present birthday gifts one by one. Although they were all valuable, they were nothing to Qin Huangzu. After listening to the introduction of the birthday gift, he nodded slightly. It was Qin Shuangfeng's turn. He took the brocade box that he had taken from the car from Yibiao and took a step forward with a proud look on his face. Suddenly, he looked at Qin Shuangyue and asked, "Sister, Grandpa loves you the most. What did you give him for his birthday?" Qin Shuangyue said calmly, "I've been busy auditing the accounts of the group company recently, so I can't spare much time. I only found time to sew 2 mugwort sachets for Grandpa, which can calm the nerves and help sleep." "A mugwort sachet?" Qin Shuangfeng pretended to be surprised and asked, "How much is that worth?" Liu Qian smiled and said, "In terms of materials, it would probably only cost a few dollars. But Miss Qin sewed it herself, and this thoughtfulness is priceless." Qin Shuangfeng shook his head and said seriously, "Business is more important, or Grandpa is more important." "Excuse me, sister, you are too perfunctory. Grandpa, guess what my dad and I have prepared?" Qin Huangzu said unhappily, "The value of the gift is not important, what matters is the thought. Since you are here, put the things down, eat your meal and then go back quickly." Qin Shuangfeng said with a drooling face, "Grandpa, please take a look first. I promise you will like it." As he spoke, he raised the box with both hands, attracting everyone's attention. After keeping everyone in suspense, he gently opened it. "Is this jade?" It's so big, and it's a jade Buddha sculpture with a gold border. It must be priceless. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. As expected of Master Feng, it's so thoughtful. Our gifts combined are not as good as this jade golden Buddha. Master Feng is so filial. Amidst the praises and flattery, Qin Shuangfeng presented a golden jade Buddha to Qin Wangzu and said, "Grandpa, this is a golden jade Buddha that my father and I asked a friend to buy from a Buddhist conference in Taylor for 550 yuan. It has been blessed by several generations of senior monks in Taylor and is a rare spiritual object. The value of the jade and gold edges is secondary. As long as Grandpa plays with it every day, it will definitely improve his spirit and prolong his life." After hearing this, the bosses cheered excitedly again. It's really good stuff. Long Xiao saw that Qin Wangzu finally showed a hint of joy in his eyes. It seemed that he was also moved. Long Xiao couldn't help but take another look at the jade golden Buddha. Although it looked brilliant and colorful, he instinctively felt that there was something wrong with the color. With a thought in his mind, he subconsciously opened his eyes of perspective. Chapter 19. Catching the joy in Qin Wangzu's eyes, Qin Shuangfeng was overjoyed. The efforts of him and his father were indeed not in vain. As long as they could impress the old man first, they could ask him to take back his order and let them return to Yuncheng. By then, with their joint efforts, Qin Shuangyue would definitely not be their opponent. The Qin family's hundreds of billions of assets will sooner or later fall into their hands. Qin Shuangfeng used his eloquence and said many words to cheer the old man up. "Grandpa, please try it for a while." He handed over the jade golden Buddha obediently. Qin Wangzu took it with a smile, and was reluctant to let it go. Suddenly he remembered something and said to Long Xiao, "Mr. Long, I'm sorry to make you laugh. It's not that I haven't seen valuable things before, and I'm not attracted to this thing because of its own value. It's because I believe in Buddhism in my later years and understand the cause and effect. So I especially respect things that have been blessed by the Buddhist teachings of the monks. Can you take a look at this thing? Does it really have Buddha nature?" Long Xiao sneered and said, "I don't know if he has Buddha nature, but the poison is quite strong. Toxic." Qin Wangzu opened his mouth in surprise. Qin Shuangfeng's eyes were about to explode with anger, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Waste, how dare you slander my treasure? Seeing that Grandpa likes it, you are jealous, right? You are not going to say that this treasure worth 5 million is not as good as 2 sachets, right?" Qin Shuangyue felt that Long Xiao was trying to save face for her, but she asked herself that she was not as good as Qin Shuangfeng in giving gifts. She was afraid that Long Xiao would be embarrassed, so she whispered, "Mr. Long may not know much about jadeite and think that this is a fake produced by a small workshop. But from what I see, this jadeite is translucent and has exposed rigidity. It is indeed a rare good variety." As he spoke, his leg under the table gently touched Long Xiao. Seeing that Qin Shuangyue had admitted it, Qin Shuangfeng refused to give in. He pointed at Long Xiao's nose and shouted, "I'll give you some respect in front of Grandpa. But if you can't produce evidence that my treasure is poisonous, I'll skin you alive right now." Liu Qian, Markuan and the other bosses all started to scold and ridicule. Liu Qian sneered, "Long Xiao, when you first met me, you bought me a pair of jade bracelets to please me. I found out that they were poisonous jade made from chemical raw materials in a small workshop. You are not traumatized, are you?" Markuan said, "That's right. Don't you think about it? Who do you think you are? Who is Master Feng? Would Master Feng buy fake things to fool people like you did?" Their words were more convincing, and now even Qin Wangzu felt that Long Xiao had made a mistake. He smiled bitterly and thought about how to help Long Xiao out of the predicament. Who knew that Long Xiao looked at the arrogant Qin Shuangfeng and sneered, "You want evidence, right? I'll give it to you right now." As he said this, he suddenly snatched the jade golden Buddha from Qin Wangzu's hand and smashed it hard on the table. No one expected that Long Xiao would be so desperate as to smash such valuable things, and it was too late to stop him. With a loud bang, the jade golden Buddha broke into pieces. "You bastard, you dare to smash my treasure? I'll fight you." Qin Shuangfeng's eyes immediately turned red. He let out a strange cry, pulled out a scimitar from Yi Biao's waist, and chopped it down on Long Xiao's head. A cold light flashed. With a clang, sparks flew everywhere. Ling Qian, who was standing behind Long Xiao, took urgent action and blocked Qin Shuangfeng's knife with his 3-edged spear. Qin Shuangfeng's wrist was numb from the shock, and the scimitar almost slipped out of his hand. He gritted his teeth and said, "Dog slave, do you want to rebel?" Ling Qian put away the thorn and said coldly, "Listen to Mr. Long." Chapter 20. Qin Shuangfeng looked at Long Xiao angrily. Long Xiao lowered his head and picked up a few long black strips from a pile of crushed jade. "What is this?" Qin Shuangyue asked curiously. Long Xiao presented the note to Qin Wangzu and sneered, "Old Qin, you are well informed, do you recognize these things?" Everyone came over curiously, tilting their heads to see many skulls and some strange runes drawn on the long piece of paper. Although they couldn't understand it, they felt uncomfortable subconsciously. Qin Wangzu's face turned livid, and he gritted his teeth and said, "When I was young, I traveled to Hong Kong and saw this kind of thing. This is the black magic that is popular in Southeast Asia and is prevalent in Taylor." Black magic. The bosses were shocked. These wealthy people had heard of this kind of thing. When they couldn't compete in business, or wanted to take revenge on someone or make someone unlucky, they would ask someone to cast a black magic on the other party. However, it was the first time they had seen a real black magic rune hidden in such a precious and exquisite emerald golden Buddha. "I was just wondering why such an exquisite jade sculpture has a gold border. It looks tacky." It turns out that the sculpture is made of two halves, and the connection is covered with a gold border. The real purpose is to make it easier to put things in the middle. Qin Shuangyu aside, looked at Qin Shuangfeng and asked with concern, "Brother Feng, where did this thing come from? You are young and ignorant, but second uncle is knowledgeable and should not be so careless. If Mr. Long hadn't figured out the secret, and Grandpa had kept this thing with him and played with it every day, then it would have been a disaster." It seemed like she was just speaking unintentionally, but the listener took it to heart. Qin Shuangfeng believed that Qin Shuangyue was taking revenge on him and that he had indeed made a big mistake. Looking at his grandfather's stern face, he was so scared that his legs went weak and he fell to his knees. "I swear, I don't know. My dad doesn't know either. We've been tricked. Grandpa, you have to believe me. My dad and I have good intentions and hope that you will get better soon." As he said this, he squeezed his eyes hard and squeezed out a few tears. Qin Wangzu was also very angry and said angrily, "You are just like your father, both of you are useless. Get out of my way and stop getting in the way here." Qin Shuangfeng agreed and hurriedly tried to stand up. Qin Wangzu said again, "Wait. We didn't make a big mistake this time, thanks to Mr. Long. Why don't you thank him quickly?" Qin Shuangfeng looked at Long Xiao, who was sitting in the middle, wishing he could eat his flesh and sleep on his skin. "If this guy hadn't interfered, I wouldn't have turned victory into defeat and lost so much." Yet he couldn't refuse. I could only grit my teeth and said with a fake smile, "Thank you, Mr. Long." Long Xiao didn't even look at him. He turned his head and spoke to Qin Shuangyue in a low voice. In front of everyone, the two acted very intimate. I don't know what Long Xiao said, but Qin Shuangyue, who was always as cold as an iceberg, actually smiled. This smile added some brightness to the whole hall. The bosses in the distance were all distracted. Qin Shuangfeng knew that Long Xiao and Qin Shuangyue had deliberately ignored him. He was filled with hatred and was secretly gritting his teeth and vowing to take revenge when suddenly a loud voice came from the door. "Divine Dr. Shui is here." Chapter 21. Dr. Shui is here. Everyone with mixed emotions was shocked and turned excitedly to look at the door. Qin Shuangfeng jumped up hurriedly as if he had found his savior. He saw an old man wearing a white kung fu shirt and a goatee standing at the gate. His face was flushed and he looked like an immortal. He said excitedly, "Quick! Please come in." Liu Qian and Marquan hurriedly went to greet them with a smile. After a warm greeting, Liu Qian and Marquan introduced Shui Dao to Qin Shuangfeng. They were still very smart and knew to do this huge favor to Qin Shuangfeng. Because Qin Shuangfeng stood in the middle, they were no longer qualified to please Qin Wangzu directly. They could only hold on to Qin Shuangfeng's thigh tightly. As long as Qin Shuangfeng gets recognition and status, their good days will be over. Qin Shuangfeng was not polite either. After chatting with Shui Dao for a few words and feeling that Shui Dao was indeed a miracle doctor, he took all the credit for himself and turned to recommend him to Qin Wangzu. "Grandpa, the Jade Golden Buddha is only the first gift. Divine Dr. Shui is the second birthday gift I prepared for you." I said the same thing again. Long Xiao is definitely an ignorant liar. He doesn't know how to treat illnesses at all. Let Dr. Shui treat you now. It has always been the wish of my father, me, and all the bosses in Yuncheng that you can be healthy, happy, and live a long life. After hearing this, Liu Qian, Ma Kuan, and the other bosses immediately echoed him, praising his achievements and wishing him longevity. Qin Huangzu couldn't refuse either, and looked at Long Xiao in embarrassment. Because of his previous experience of treatment, he did not doubt Long Xiao's ability. But could Long Xiao really cure him completely? Also, he wanted to know whether Xuedao was a real miracle doctor or just a name for nothing. Long Xiao didn't care, he also wanted to see how capable Xuedao was. But Qin Shuanyue was unhappy. Isn't this making things difficult for Long Xiao? It shows that we don't have enough trust in Long Xiao. After Long Xiao smashed the Jade Buddha, she felt closer to Long Xiao. Seeing Long Xiao being roasted on the fire, she couldn't help but speak up for him. Grandpa, even if Dr. Xue really has the skills, so what? One disease should not be treated with two masters. Mr. Long has already cured 80% of your disease. Now let someone else treat it randomly. What if the methods are inappropriate and conflicting? She pouted and spoke before Long Xiao could. Long Xiao smiled awkwardly and said, "It doesn't matter. If he wants to try, he can try. If it doesn't work, I can try again." Qin Huangzu was awakened by Qin Shuanyue's words and hurriedly said, "Shuanyue is right. Mr. Long, I will not trouble two masters for one illness. I only trust you. Dr. Xue, you have made a wasted trip. Don't worry, my Qin family will pay for all the travel expenses." Xuedao looked deeply at Qin Huangzu's face, then stared at Long Xiao and sneered twice, then bowed with a sullen face and said, "I won't take a penny. Goodbye." After saying that, he turned and left. This made Qin Shuangfeng, Liu Qian and Ma Kuan all terrified. Qin Shuangfeng hurriedly said, "Wait a minute. Stop him quickly." Ma Kuan hurried over and stopped Xuedao. Liu Qian smiled and said, "Dr. Xue, there's no need to be angry." Xuedao waved his hands, and said in a very mature manner, "Excuse me for being blunt, I'm not angry, but I don't want to take the money of a dead person." Chapter 22. Dead. Qin Shuangfeng frowned and asked, "Dr. Xue, who are you saying is dead?" Xuedao sighed, turned around and looked at Qin Huangzu, and said, "Old Qin, you are already terminally ill. A dying man does not think of seeking a good doctor, but trusts a white-faced man with no hair on his mouth. This is accelerating his demise. I never thought that the always wise Qin Zhu would make the same mistake that all patients make when they try to catch fish in a tree. How dare he say that?" Everyone was moved after hearing this. Qin Shuangfeng said excitedly, "Yes. I also think that my grandfather was eager to cure his illness and was deceived by the pretty boy with his sweet words. Dr. Xue, do you have a way to cure my grandfather? As long as you can do it, I will give you 100 million. Hearing 100 million, Xuedao smiled slightly, looked at Qin Huangzu and said, "Old Qin, I know you have preconceived ideas and won't trust me easily. I can also give up, but doctors are kind-hearted, and with your grandson's filial piety, I can treat you. The prerequisite is to first publicly depose this pretty boy who corrupts medical ethics and undermines the rules of the industry, and restore the reputation of doctors in the world. Can you do it?" To be honest, even the knowledgeable Qin Huangzu was a little intimidated by his pretentiousness. He felt as if he was an old man who was desperate and had been deceived by a young man selling health products and had hallucinations. He didn't even know what to say for a moment. Long Xiao could not help laughing. After some observation, he became more and more certain that Xuedao was the charlatan who had killed people and was hiding abroad as Yang Chunhua mentioned. Moreover, he noticed the smug looks on Liu Qian and Ma Kuan's faces, and he could tell with his toes that Xuedao had received their instructions in advance and was coming for him. In this case, Long Xiao sneered and said, "Curing illnesses and saving lives is a meritorious deed. If someone uses this to cheat, he should indeed be abolished. Dr. Xue, since you question me, how about we compete?" Xuedao laughed loudly. "Wow, you dare to compete with me in medical skills? I have studied medicine for longer than you are now. What can you compare with?" Long Xiao sneered, "There are different levels of knowledge, and there are different levels of knowledge. Who says that the older ones are always the best? If you don't dare to compete, slap yourself twice and apologize for what you just said. Then go back overseas with your tail between your legs, and never set foot in our country again." The dragon's roar became louder, its tiger eyes glared angrily, and a domineering aura emanated from it. The bosses around were all stunned. Qin Shuangyue, who was sitting next to him, couldn't help but tremble. She felt that she was struck by the domineering aura of Long Xiao. Looking at his handsome and angry profile, her mind twitched, and she thought of the scene when he broke into the room without permission not long ago to peek at the golden body. Her pretty face instantly turned red, her heart was pounding, and she could no longer calm down. Dr. Shui, I am Long Xiao's ex-wife. I guarantee that he doesn't know any medical skills. Don't worry, just compete with him. Yes, I can testify to that. He is a born incompetent waste. Liu Qian and Markuan encouraged excitedly. Qin Shuangfeng also shouted, Dr. Shui, as long as you can expose his mask, I will double your reward. A reward of 100 million yuan would be doubled to 200 million yuan. Shuedao didn't expect that this trip would bring such huge gains. After success, she could really enjoy a life without worries. He suppressed his inner ecstasy, stared at Long Xiao and sneered, Young man, don't be too impetuous. If you lose, have you thought about what to do? Long Xiao sneered, I lost, I will do whatever you want to me. If you lose, I will. His eyes fell on Liu Qian's face, and he said coldly, I said before that some people have to kneel down and admit their mistakes and some people, looking at Markuan, have to drink urine. He will return all the humiliation that this pair of bastards have inflicted on him. Chapter 23. Liu Qian and Markuan knew that Long Xiao wanted to take revenge on them. Although they firmly believed that Long Xiao did not know any medical skills and Shuedao would definitely win, they suddenly hesitated when they saw Long Xiao was so confident. They couldn't help but wonder why Qin Wangzu and Qin Shuangyue praised Long Xiao so much. Could it be that Long was really pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger, and had been hiding his identity all along? What would they do if he did win? You can't just kneel down and admit your mistake and drink urine on the spot, right? They looked at each other, both showing embarrassment. Just as they were trying to find a way to defend themselves, Qin Shuangfeng next to them couldn't help but said impatiently, It's just kneeling down to admit your mistakes and drinking urine, I agree. You promise? Yes. I agreed for you. Any questions? Don't you have confidence in the miracle doctor you hired? Liu Qian and Markuan were embarrassed. Facing Qin Shuangfeng's oppressive gaze, they had no choice but to grit their teeth and say, Okay. Mr. Long, we agree. If you lose, be prepared to be punished. Qin Shuangfeng said excitedly, Dr. Shui, let's get started. I can't wait to see this guy embarrass himself. Shuedao looked at Long Xiao and sneered, To prevent people from saying that I took advantage of you, I can give you the chance to strike first. Long Xiao shook his head and smiled, You should go first. If I go first, you won't have a chance to attack. Crazy bastard. Shuedao said angrily, I know you are guilty. If that's the case, I will take action first to open your eyes. In fact, he deliberately said that Long Xiao would go first, betting that Long Xiao was young and energetic and would not make the first move. In this way, he could legitimately make the first move. This has a huge advantage. After he has finished the treatment, Long Xiao will treat it again. If the final effect is not good, it can be said that Long Xiao has destroyed his medical skills. If the final effect is good, he can say that Dragon Roar is the icing on the cake on the basis of his treatment. No matter what, he was invincible. He secretly laughed at Long Xiao for being young and not understanding the dangers of the world, but on the surface he looked serious, took out a brocade box from his pocket and placed it on the table. Everyone's attention was immediately attracted, and they all wanted to know what secret was in the box of this famous doctor. Even Qin Shuangyue was attracted. She leaned forward, got close to Long Xiao, and asked casually, What's in the box? Long Xiao Sui glanced at him and said with a smile, Silver needles for acupuncture, and a bottle of pills. At this time, Shuedao happened to open the box and saw that it was indeed filled with silver needles of different lengths and a white jade porcelain bottle. On the bottle was a yellow note that read, 9 yang rejuvenating pills. Qin Shuangyue nodded, and suddenly felt something was wrong. She looked at Long Xiao and asked, How did you know? Long Xiao laughed and said, I said I have X-ray vision, do you believe me? As he spoke, his eyes involuntarily glanced at Qin Shuangyue's chest. TSK. Qin Shuangyue curled her lips, Forget it if you don't want to talk about it. Are you bleeding from the nose? Long Xiao quickly took out a piece of paper to cover his nose, and hesitantly said, It's okay, I've been a little irritated recently. I see you know you're going to lose, so you're so anxious that your heart is burning. The 5 internal organs of human body, Qi transforms into 5 elements. Yin and yang complement each other, mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. You're so anxious that your heart attacks your heart, and the heart controls your spirit and blood. With no place to flow, it will burst out of your nose. Young man, it's not too late for you to regret now. Dao looked very profound. Xiao threw the tissue he had used to wipe his nosebleed into the trash can, silently practicing the Hongmeng breathing technique, and immediately his mind became clear. He looked at Dao and nodded with a smile, saying, "That makes sense. What's next? How are you going to treat the old man's illness?" Dao snorted coldly, looked at Qin Wangzu and said, "Old Qin, although you look strong now, it is all supported by your innate strong mentality. Ordinary people don't have such a strong spirit and would have collapsed long ago. I see that your forehead is dark and your aura is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. If my guess is correct, it should be the result of overwork and accumulated injuries when you were young. Now I am seriously ill. I often can't sleep at night and vomit blood at dawn. This is a sign that I don't have much time left." Chapter 24. I don't know if what I said is right. Qin Shuanyue said in surprise, "Can you really tell? Grandpa often can't sleep at night and sometimes vomits blood." Seeing Qin Shuanyue's reaction, Dao smiled slightly, stroked his goatee, and showed a proud look. Qin Xuanfeng took the lead, and everyone excitedly praised Dao's medical skills. By the way, they did not forget to step on Xiao. Xiao just smiled. First of all, what Dao said is basically common sense, and anyone who has learned a little bit of Chinese medicine can say it. Secondly, Qin Wangzu had been seriously ill for a long time. It was not difficult for anyone who was interested to find out about his condition. So, in his opinion, it is not worth mentioning. But Qin Wangzu was still frightened, and said admiringly, "Mr. Xue is right. I wonder how to treat it." Dao stroked his goatee and said, "It would be a terminal illness for others, but it is just a piece of cake for me, a genius doctor who specializes in treating difficult and complicated diseases. I only need 2 steps. First, I will use the rejuvenation needle method to acupuncture you to open up your meridians and revive your qi and blood. Then, take the 9-yang rejuvenating pill that I have carefully developed. It will work together inside and outside to open up the yin and yang. I guarantee that you will be reborn and live a vigorous life for another 60 years. Qin Shuangfeng frowned and said, "Can I really live another 60 years? 60 years is a period of time. By that time, not to mention his father, even he would be an old man in his 80s or 90s, and there would be no inheritance for him." His original intention was just to let Dao show some effect in the treatment in exchange for recognition and status. He could keep her for a year or half a year at most, which would not affect the old man's death. Dao smiled and said, "The old man is already very old. It may be difficult for him to live another 60 years, but 30 years is not a problem." 30 years? That is too long. Qin Shuangfeng frowned and said nothing. Qin Wangzu asked, "Is it really that magical?" Dao said, "Of course. But acupuncture requires the old man to take off his shirt. Do you think we can change to a private room, or find a fence to cover it?" Qin Wangzu looked at Xiao, asking if he could give him acupuncture. Xiao nodded. Qin Wangzu was relieved and said with a hearty smile, "Are you afraid to see this dying old man? Don't bother, it's right here." As he said that, he began to unbutton his clothes. Qin Shuangfeng hurriedly said, "My grandfather is showing his golden body. It is your honor for you to see it. No one is allowed to take pictures. Put away your phones." Xiao said to Qin Shuanyue, "The old man took off his clothes in public to show his golden body. He is still as heroic as ever." He leaned close, and his fiery voice blew into Qin Shuanyue's ears. Especially the word golden body was like a hot fire. Qin Shuanyue thought of something, and her face began to turn red again. She gritted her teeth and nodded, too nervous to look at Xiao. As the clothes were taken off, everyone sighed in admiration. Even Xiao showed admiration. Qin Wangzu's old body was covered with scars. There were knife wounds and bullet wounds. Ling Qian's eyes were already filled with tears, and he gritted his teeth and said, "This is all the glory that the old man left behind when he defended his country on the battlefield in the past." Hearing this, Qin Wangzu seemed to be back in his dream of blowing horns in the camp, and was once again in the battlefield full of gunfire, bullets, blood and fire. There was a heroic look in his eyes. Dr. Xue, come on, he said in a deep voice, with the spirit of Guangong scraping his bones to cure poison. Everyone was holding their breath and watching Dr. Xue intently, wondering how he would perform his rejuvenation acupuncture and create miracles. Chapter 25. Under the pressure of Qin Wangzu's momentum and with so many eyes on him, although Xuedao remained calm on the surface, she couldn't help but feel a little panicked in her heart. To be honest, this was the first time he had seen such a large scene. This was the power of a whole city. If he performed poorly and made a fool of himself, he knew he would never be able to leave the banquet hall. Dr. Xue, what's wrong? Is there anything else you want to tell me? Liu Qian couldn't help but ask with concern. Ahem. Xuedao said hastily, no. I'm just relying on my luck. Mr. Qin's magnanimity is admirable. In that case, I won't be polite. His face turned serious, and he took out a rolled leather from the box and carefully spread it out on the table. Silver needles of different lengths were inserted into it. He first picked up a short needle, looked at the acupuncture points on Qin Wangzu's chest, and said, "Don't be nervous, Mr. Qin. Try to relax your muscles to make it easier for the silver needle to pierce the acupuncture points." Long Xiao also watched with his divine power. Before the spiritual pearl in his body was activated, he was already keen on traditional Chinese culture, and especially loved to study Chinese medicine and acupuncture. But he was just an amateur. When the spirit pearl awakened, he obtained ancient medical skills, which were his exclusive treasures, and he had never competed with others. He also rarely saw others perform acupuncture. Watching carefully at this moment, he saw Xuedao skillfully inserting silver needles into the main acupuncture points on Qin Wangzu's chest and back, and he felt a little impressed. At least this guy was skilled in identifying acupuncture points and inserting needles. But that's all. These superficial acupunctures may be able to promote qi and activate blood circulation to remove blood stasis, but they cannot achieve the effect of opening up the meridians and reviving qi and blood, as Xuedao said before. To put it bluntly, it's just the level of an experienced health care physician. Xuedao's face was very solemn, as if she was doing something very sacred. Influenced by him, everyone also held their breath and stared at her intently, not daring to disturb her. After half an hour, Xuedao finally finished the last needle and a relieved smile appeared on his face. He whispered, "Mr. Qin, how do you feel now?" Qin Wangzu frowned slightly, with a look of delight, and said, "I didn't feel anything at first, then I felt a little sore and numb, and now these needle points are a little hot." Aha! Xuedao clapped his hands and laughed, saying, "What did I say? You have accumulated hidden injuries and your tendons and veins are blocked. You must first use my unique acupuncture method to open up your blood vessels and revive your vitality. Then take my powerful tonic 9-yang rejuvenating pills, and even the most stubborn disease will be cleared away. Mr. Qin, I want to congratulate you in advance." After hearing this, not only everyone else, but even Qin Wangzu showed surprise. Qin Shuangfeng immediately took the lead, praising Xuedao's medical skills, and at the same time scolded and mocked Long Xiao again. Marquan rolled up his sleeves, already impatient to force Long Xiao to kneel down and be punished. "Shut up." Qin Wangzu suddenly remembered that doing so would offend Long Xiao, and hurriedly stopped him. He looked at Long Xiao and smiled apologetically. "Mr. Long has made the greatest contribution, and I know it in my heart. Don't worry, sir, I'm here, and no one will be allowed to be presumptuous to you." Long Xiao knew that Qin Wangzu already believed that Xuedao could cure him, but he did not forget his previous contributions, which could be regarded as repaying a favor. He smiled and said nothing. Xuedao had been walking on thin ice before, taking every step cautiously. Now that he had completed the first step, and the effect was unexpectedly good, and he had also gained Qin Wangzu's recognition, his heart was open and he was somewhat unrestrained. Chapter 26. He held up the white jade porcelain bottle and said with a smile on his face, "Strike while the iron is hot. Let's seize the opportunity and take this tonic pill now. I spent a fortune collecting various magical herbs from all over the world, and spent 9,981 days to make this. It has a unique formula and magical effects. I won't sell it to ordinary people no matter how much money they pay." Qin Shuangfeng said with a smile, "What are you nagging about? Give my grandfather a few more pills, and I guarantee you will make a fortune." "Thank you very much, Master Feng." Xuedao thanked him flatteringly. He originally poured 3 pills into his palm, and after hesitating, he added 3 more. Qin Shuangyue was still worried when she saw the black pill in Xue Dao's palm. She subconsciously grabbed Long Xiao's hand and whispered, "Is this a 3-no product? Will it cause any harm if I take it?" Long Xiao smiled and said, "He said that he made it himself. Of course, it is a 3-no product produced by a small workshop." But he sniffed hard and smelled a strong medicinal fragrance, and said, "It shouldn't be a big problem." To comfort him, he patted Qin Shuangyue's hand that was holding his arm and said, "Don't worry, I'm here." He had already figured out Xue Dao's routine for treating illnesses. To put it bluntly, no matter what kind of difficult and complicated disease this guy faced, he would always use these 2 tricks. That is, he would first use acupuncture in traditional Chinese medicine to activate blood circulation and remove blood stasis for the patient. Then he would use strong tonic medicine to attack the patient. With these 2 skills, most patients can recover in a short period of time. This period of time was enough for Xue Dao to win the title of miracle doctor and leave with a considerable medical fee. After this period of time, the patient's health deteriorated again, or even became worse, and he could not be found. Therefore, Long Xiao was certain that these tonic pills would not hinder his subsequent root elimination treatment. They might even be helpful. Qin Shuangyue felt the power of the bacca, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly she realized that she was holding Long Xiao's arm, and Long Xiao's large and warm hand was covering her hand. The 2 of them were actually in skin contact. She panicked and quickly pulled back. "Bring me some hot tea." Xue Dao held a tonic pill in one hand, like a birthday star who was about to offer medicine to the Queen Mother. With his other hand, he took a cup of hot tea that Qin Shuangfeng handed to him attentively, and walked to Qin Wangzu with a figure 8 step. "Mr. Qin, follow my instructions and swallow it immediately." Seeing that Long Xiao did not stop him, and since he already trusted Xue Dao, Qin Wangzu put all 6 pills in his mouth and drank the whole cup of hot tea in one breath. Everyone widened their eyes again, expecting a miracle to happen. Qin Wangzu brushed his chest with both hands and said in surprise, "It feels warm." Xue Dao said excitedly, "It works so quickly. Stand up and take a few steps to try." Qin Wangzu stood up in surprise, took 2 steps, and said excitedly, "It feels like I drank a pot of boiling water, it's so hot." His face quickly turned red. Xue Dao shouted, "It's done. What did I say? There is no incurable disease in this world that I can't cure." Qin Shuangfeng said excitedly, "Long Xiao, you lost, why don't you kneel down for me?" Liu Qian, Ma Kuan and the others, all with excited faces, followed Qin Shuangfeng and approached Long Xiao. Qin Shuangyue panicked and said, "What are you going to do? Don't mess around." Long Xiao had been paying attention to Qin Wangzu's actions and reactions. Seeing that his face was flushing rapidly and his breathing was getting faster, he shouted, "Be careful." Qin Wangzu suddenly screamed, spit out a mouthful of black blood, closed his eyes, and fell backwards with his face up. Chapter 27. Qin Shuangfeng and the others were immersed in the joy of victory, especially Qin Shuangfeng. Punishing Long Xiao was a small matter. The main purpose was to use Long Xiao to bring down Qin Shuangyue. Then, in the future, they and their son would have a smooth journey in the Qin family. They never expected such a serious emergency. Seeing Qin Wangzu vomiting blood and falling backwards, no one could react. Even Qin Shuangyue was at a loss. But Ling Qian, who had been silent all the time, was always paying attention to Qin Wangzu's situation. After hearing Long Xiao's reminder, he shouted, rushed forward and hugged Qin Wangzu. "Grandpa, are you okay?" Qin Shuangyue rushed forward. Qin Shuangfeng and the others stood there in a daze, all dumbfounded. Ling Qian saw that Qin Wangzu's eyes were tightly closed and his face was dark purple. He did not respond when he called him. With red eyes, he shouted, "Xue Dao murdered the old man. This is a heinous crime. Seal off the scene immediately and no one is allowed to leave." As the captain of the Qin family security team and one of old man Qin Wangzu's most trusted confidants, Ling Qian certainly has a group of loyal subordinates. The men obeyed the order and immediately took action, placing the whole under martial law. At the same time, Xue Dao was also controlled. Impossible. How is this possible? Xue Dao was hit on the neck by the steel knife, his face turned pale, his legs went weak and he almost fell to his knees. How so? "Mr. Feng, what should we do now?" Liu Qian was also dumbfounded, looking at Qin Shuangfeng pitifully and asked. Ma Kuan and the other bosses realized that something serious had happened, and they were all too frightened to speak out. Marcoan even deliberately moved away from Liu Qian. He had already thought of a countermeasure in his mind at the first moment. If Xuedao really cured Qin Wangzu to death and the Qin family held him accountable, then he would have to draw a clear line between himself and Liu Qian. Xuedao was invited by Liu Qian, and has nothing to do with him. After a brief panic, Qin Shuangfen quickly calmed down. He looked at the unconscious Qin Wangzu with a gloomy face, his eyes flickering, and no one knew what he was thinking. "Mr. Feng, what should we do?" Yi Biao came over and asked nervously in a low voice. After what happened today, he has openly joined Qin Shuangfen. He also hopes to rely on Qin Shuangfen to replace Ling Qian and become the powerful security captain of the Qin family. But now it seems, if Qin Shuangfen fell, he would not be able to survive. Qin Shuangfen seemed to have made up his mind. He sneered and gritted his teeth and said, "Take your people and protect me. Follow me." After saying that, he suddenly raised his voice, "Get out of the way, don't touch my grandpa." He rushed over as a grandson. He roughly pushed Ling Qian and Qin Shuangyue away, felt Qin Wangzu's pulse with his hand, and gritted his teeth and said, "Grandpa, unfortunately died." Qin Shuangyue, Ling Qian, tell me, what did you instruct Long Xiao to do to Grandpa? What did you say? Qin Shuangyue said with red eyes, "Don't spit blood on me." Qin Shuangfen gritted his teeth and grinned. Although the incident was caused by Xuedao, it must have been caused by Long Xiao's previous reckless diagnosis and treatment. He cannot be separated from the responsibility. "Yi Biao, tell your people to control Long Xiao for me." "Yes, sir." Yi Biao understood Qin Shuangfeng's intention and immediately waved his hand. 4 of his men rushed over to surround Long Xiao. Yi Biao himself held a steel knife in his hand and stood nervously beside Qin Shuangfen. Qin Shuangfen said with a face full of grief, "Now I declare that Grandpa was murdered by Qin Shuangyue and Long Xiao. As the only direct male descendant of the Qin family, I, Qin Shuangfen, will take over the Qin family and avenge Grandpa. Those who support me, come over here. I support Master Feng." Liu Qian's face was full of surprise and she hurried over.